Chapter 220, Destruction of the Tianxiong Clan. 1. Yunli's face began to darken as Duo Li continued to speak into his ear non-stop with an even grimmer expression. After Commander Duo Li had finished talking, Yunli turned back to Jian Chen with a bewildered expression, yet he did not leave. Yunli furrowed his eyebrows together as he continued to look at Jian Chen. With a moment's hesitation, he finally spoke, "Brother Jian Chen. 1 year ago in Wake City a major event took place. The number 1 clan in Wake City, the Tianxiong clan, had their young lord Tianxiong killed by someone. And if this piece of information is reliable, then the person who killed Tianxiong is a youth that isn't too far apart in age with you. Most importantly, this youth's name is also Jian Chen. Surely that means the two of you are the same person." Hearing this, Jian Chen's facial expressions didn't change at all. This type of end result was something he should have anticipated long ago. Without any other words, he smiled. "The Lord is correct, that person is this one." Although he had long since guessed that this answer was coming, Yunli still couldn't help but feel his heart rate speed up after hearing Jian Chen's answer. Although this matter regarding Jian Chen and the Tianxiong clan was completely unrelated to this magical beast wave, this was still a crucial moment where the lives of tens of thousands of citizens were at stake. This wasn't a time for them to be sloppy. The entire defense force had to be one cohesive unit in order to help defend Wake City. Whether it was Jian Chen or the Tianxiong clan, they were still one of the bigger powers of Wake City. With this hatred between the two of them, it would bring about a huge headache for Yunli since he knew that the two were like fire if put together. He was afraid that if they were to get too close to each other, then there would definitely be huge losses for everyone. If this was any other time, Yunli wouldn't have cared. But at this moment where a wave of magical beasts would be coming soon, he definitely wanted to avoid the explosion that would happen in between them. At the very least, until the magical beast wave was over, he could not let Wake City lose any more power. Yunli looked at Jian Chen seriously. "Brother Jian Chen. Even I have heard about the grudge between you and the Tianxiong clan, and while I myself would like to stay out of it, Wake City is in a moment of crisis at the moment. We need to protect this city. So I would hope that you and the Tianxiong clan can put aside your differences temporarily until the wave is over." Would Brother Jian Chen agree to this? Yunli spoke courteously. Since he had placed Jian Chen in a high position now, he wouldn't dare try to belittle him whether or not he had the support of a clan. Jian Chen shook his head as his eyes narrowed. "Lord Yunli, I'm afraid my answer will disappoint you." Hearing this, Yunli's face dropped slightly. His heart knew that answer was coming, yet he still wasn't willing to let the question drop. With a heavy heart, he asked once more, "Brother Jian Chen, please pay attention to the current situation. Furthermore, the Tianxiong clan is even stronger than the Zhou clan. Despite the calamity they faced a year ago and losing the number 1 clan title in Wake City, they remain strong-willed. No matter how much they lost, the Tianxiong clan still is one of the strongest clans and are not to be belittled." Jian Chen's heart shook for a moment after listening to Yunli. "Lord Yunli. Aside from Tianxiong, what other experts does the Tianxiong clan have?" Yunli hesitated for a moment before saying, "Aside from Tianxiong, there is another middle great Saint Master expert who is the younger brother of Tianxiong. His name is Tianxiong Daoyun. Other than that, Tianxiong has a few connections with some of the captains of the stronger mercenary groups. If they were to unite, then their power would be extraordinarily terrifying." After finding out this piece of information, Jian Chen's face still didn't make a change in expression. He simply had the same reaction as before while he sipped his cup of tea. Seeing how calm Jian Chen was as if he didn't care at all for the Tianxiong clan, Yunli's inner thoughts were finally decided. He was afraid that Jian Chen had an extremely strong background supporting him, but that couldn't be said for sure. He wasn't even sure if a high-leveled expert was protecting him either. Yunli was a meticulous person. The moment he saw that Jian Chen didn't have any plans of letting the Tianxiong clan go, he didn't plan on trying to convince Jian Chen anymore. To him now, Jian Chen was worth far more than the Tianxiong clan was. Even if Jian Chen had no background to support him, for a youth like him to be able to kill a great Saint Master, this was a talent that transcended the heavens. With some time, his achievements throughout the Tianyuan continent would be known to all. After Jian Chen left the mansion, the sky had already turned dark. While he was still in the mansion, Tianxiong didn't ask about Uncle Kendall's family. In his opinion, that matter would be best done when the matter between him and the Tianxiong clan was finished. This was the best and safest way to find out about Kendall's family. The day was already all but gone, and Tianxiong had already fought in 2 different battles. This had led to a huge decrease in his energy, so now was not the time Tianxiong wanted to fight against the Tianxiong clan. Instead, he began to look for a restaurant and inn to stay for the night. Time quickly flew by as morning came. Tianxiong opened his eyes from his sitting cultivation position. All of the energy he had used up yesterday had been completely recovered, making him able to operate at his peak condition once more. After Tianxiong left the inn, he listened to the random discussions of the people outside regarding the total annihilation of both the Zhou mercenaries and Zhou clan. The Zhou clan and Zhou mercenaries had very strong reputations within Wake City, but for them to both be exterminated in such a short amount of time, this news had quickly spread throughout the city like wildfire. No matter if it was a small or large street, every person was talking about it. At the same time, every single major power within Wake City had immediately set out to scout for information the moment they heard about this. The Tianxiong clan used to be the #1 power in Wake City, and their might was known to everyone. No matter where he went, Tianxiong would be able to hear about the Tianxiong clan. Chapter 221, Destruction of the Tianxiong clan. 2. The Tianxiong clan was positioned in the northern part of the city. Just past the large halls of the Tianxiong courtyards, the Tianxiong clan's leader Tianxiong Lai sat upon his throne with 2 people by his side. Both of them were young, but their presence was unusual and their eyes flickered with an unusual light, making others feel that these 2 were not like common people. A year ago, even though the Tianxiong clan had suffered a tremendous loss from Tianxiong and were no longer the #1 clan in the eyes of Wake City, everyone still understood that the Tianxiong clan's peak experts had not weakened at all. In terms of martial prowess, they still maintained the spot of the #1 clan. The main reason was because of Tianxiong Lai. Although he had stopped at the middle Great Saint Master level, he had an Earth-attributed Saint force which granted him superiority over others. Even those at the peak Great Saint Master level wouldn't be able to contend against Tianxiong Lai. However, in terms of controlling Wake City, the Tianxiong clan was no longer in power like it used to be. That was because Tianxiong Kang's death had brought a great amount of pain to Tianxiong Lai. Because of that, he didn't pay enough attention to the control his Tianxiong clan had over Wake City, therefore their power declined despite having enough martial power to maintain it. Tianxiong Lai himself had changed drastically during this year as well. His entire body grew thin and even his hair became gray. Tianxiong Lai had a smile on his face as he looked at the men in front of him. There was a lively look to their faces, and if anyone were to recognize them, they would be so surprised that their jaws would drop. That was because these people were the very well-known figures and captains of the larger mercenary groups in Wake City. Each one of them represented a different mercenary group and were very strong men in their own rights. Each mercenary group had a number of over 100 people with a strength that was not like most groups. Among the group in front of him, there were even 2 elders who held 2 different clans with large amounts of political power. These groups of men could even be said to hold an incredible amount of power within Wake City. It was only when something major was about to happen that they would all convene together. Otherwise it would be very hard for everyone to meet up, thus anyone that saw this sight would be astonished. Fellow brothers, I've invited everyone here today for their assistance in helping me kill a person. Tianxiong Lai spoke out to the representatives of each mercenary group with a loud voice. Tianxiong Lai, we've been friends for over a dozen years now. Whatever it is you need help with, then all you need is to ask. As long as I have the power, I will do it. After Tianxiong Lai had spoken, a sturdy-looking middle-aged man had answered him. That's right, Tianxiong Lai. With our friendship, whatever it is you need help with you just have to ask. You don't have to beat around the bush like a virgin on her wedding night. Spoke a dark-tanned man. He wore short pants, revealing bulges of muscle on his legs. From the looks of it, those legs looked as if they were capable of bending a steel plate in half with a simple kick. After that, the entire group of men began to call out their agreement to helping out Tianxiong Lai. After hearing this, Tianxiong Lai had a faint smile on his face as he sat there. Almost if he had remembered something, the smile on his face quickly receded. In a circle of emotions, Tianxiong Lai suddenly had a painful expression. Fellow brothers, do you still remember when my son Tianxiong Kong was killed a year ago? Hearing that, everyone looked at each other with a solemn face. However, no one spoke out. It was as if they were waiting for Tianxiong Lai to say something. Tianxiong Lai continued to speak. A year ago, a single youth entered Wake City and murdered my son Tianxiong Kong. Not only that, but he dealt a serious blow to my Tianxiong clan, and despite me personally chasing after him, it was to no avail due to his cunningness. Using the terrain of the magical beast mountain range to ambush and kill the experts of my Tianxiong clan, in the end, he finally escaped from my grasp. Tianxiong Lai's face began to grow more and more wrathful as he talked. He despised Jian Chen down to the bone because not only did Jian Chen kill his son Tianxiong Kong, but he had even played around with Tianxiong Lai while in the magical beast mountain range. To him, this was a personal disgrace. He had never been beaten to such a miserable degree by anyone of a lower level of strength like this before. Tianxiong Lai, could it be the murderer of your son has returned to Wake City once more? The dark-skinned person from before spoke out once more. Tianxiong Lai nodded his head slightly. Surely everyone has heard about the major event yesterday. Not only was the Zhou mercenaries eradicated, but the Zhou clan itself was destroyed in a single day. However, after a small investigation, the man who destroyed both the Zhou clan and Zhou mercenaries was a 20-year-old youth named Jian Chen. Everyone's face immediately hardened like stone the moment they heard that final sentence, along with a mixture of extreme shock. They had already heard about the massacre of the Zhou clan, but they hadn't known as much about the matter as Tianxiong Lai. What surprised them the most was that the person who had destroyed both groups in a single day was merely a 20-year-old youth. This was all but inconceivable to them. Immediately the whole group went quiet as they processed this piece of information. After a while, an elder broke the silence. Tianxiong Lai, this Jian Chen who destroyed the Zhou clan, he surely must not be weak at all. Tianxiong Lai shook his head slightly with furrowed eyebrows. I fought against him a year ago and understood his strength quite well. At the most, he was nothing more than a saint master and wasn't even able of handling a single blow from me. Yet, he was also extremely fast, so that even as I chased him I had to use quite a large amount of energy. Because of this, he escaped from me. Furthermore, his sword strokes were extremely fast as well. Anyone on his level of strength would simply not have enough time to react, and in that moment, he was able to kill the Saint Masters of my clan in the magical Beast Mountain range. Although this was a year ago, even if he was able to improve his strength, there must be a limit. Even a genius with an outstanding potential would not be able to make a breakthrough from a Saint Master to the peak Great Saint Master or Earth Saint Master in the span of a single year. So it is my guess that he had some help with eradicating the Zhou clan. Tianxiong Lai, do you mean to ask if you want our help to capture the assassin who killed your son? A regular-looking man asked. I've invited everyone here today not to help capture him, but to help block him if he tries to escape once more. I do not wish for him to slip away from my grasp again, and if he truly does dare to appear within Wake City, then I, Tianxiong Lai, swear that he will not leave the city alive. Tianxiong Lai pledged. As he spoke, his tone gradually grew colder and colder as his eyes began to spark with a killing intent. Chapter 222, Destruction of the Tianxiong Clan, 3. While the group of people within the hall conversed with each other, a 20-year-old youth wearing a white robe walked to the Tianxiong clan's gates. He was rather handsome with a face that could only be described as perfect. Adding his natural charm to his personality, he could definitely not be considered someone of normal status. This youth was Jian Chen. Seeing the main halls, Jian Chen's eyes sparked with a huge desire to kill. The memory of when he had first been chased by Tianxiong Lai out of Wake City was still quite clear in his mind. Jian Chen was normally not a man who would thought narrow-mindedly, but against the Tianxiong clan, he would not let them go. Return kindness with kindness and return animosity with animosity. If there was a trickle of kindness, return it with a gushing spring of kindness. If the hatred was carved deep within the bones, then return the favor 100 times back. This was the personal motto that Jian Chen had carried with him from his time as a hermit in his past world. Even today, Jian Shen had not changed his style of thought. The courtyard of the Tianxiong clan was rather simple, with gates that were tall and remained open without a problem. Upon looking in, one could see 8 sturdy and resilient men who would return the stares with a bright eye. Jian Shen slowed down his pace as he calmly walked toward the open courtyard as if he was taking a walk. In fact, just looking at him would seem as if he hadn't a single amount of hostility. The 8 guards at the gates realized Jian Shen was coming toward them, so the moment he approached, 2 men blocked the path and called out to him. "Halt! What matters might you have here?" Staring at the 2 men in front of him, Jian Shen finally revealed a cold smile. "I've come to kill you all." The guards all stared blankly at him as they processed his answer. While thinking about what he had just said with a loosened guard, there was suddenly a bright flash of light as Jian Shen's light wind sword suddenly struck out at the guards. Immediately, the tip of the sword had pierced through each one of their throats. Jian Shen's attack had been too sudden, and for these guards who only possessed the strength of a great saint, they weren't even able to pull out their saint weapons. So in a blink of an eye, these 8 guards were killed without trouble. After killing these people, Jian Shen continued forward past the threshold into the courtyards where a group of members were at. "Who are you? Stop right there." The moment Jian Shen entered the courtyard, a large explosion of sounds rang out around him as the shadows of 2 men suddenly flew at Jian Shen from not too far away. Jian Shen laughed to himself. It is no wonder the Tianxiong clan used to be the #1 clan. Who would have thought that right next to the courtyard gates there would be 2 Saint Masters waiting to ambush someone? The speed these Saint Masters were traveling at was extremely fast. In the moment Jian Shen was thinking to himself, they had already arrived at Jian Shen's side and brought out their swords in preparation to fight against him. A strong amount of Saint force accompanied their swords as they swung out at Jian Shen. These 2 Saint Masters had been guarding the gates from the inside, and the moment they saw Jian Shen cross into the courtyard, they sprung into action. Since they could see the dead bodies of the 8 guards, they knew Jian Shen was not a weak foe and spared no words before engagement. The saint weapons flew within half a meter away from Jian Shen when the light wind sword immediately reappeared within Jian Shen's hands. With a silver arc of light, the light wind sword flew out at the 2 swords with an inconceivable speed. Before the 2 saint weapons could even get within 3 inches of Jian Shen, he had already speared the throats of the 2 Saint Masters. After that, Jian Shen's body flickered as he reappeared 3 steps away from his original position to avoid the 2 saint weapons that continued to fall down from inertia. Because it was currently morning, the Tianxiong clan's courtyard had plenty of people doing their morning exercises. Some members were even patrolling around, but the moment they had seen Jian Shen kill the 2 Saint Masters, they had naturally stopped where they were and cried out a warning. "An assassin is here. Someone's causing a disturbance. An enemy is at our gates, everyone prepare yourself." The previously quiet Tianxiong clan had erupted into a cacophony of sounds as the panicked shouts of everyone rang through the air. Practically everyone with confidence flew at Jian Shen while everyone else immediately ran back into the halls to warn the leader of the Tianxiong clan, Tianxiong Lai. Seeing the group of people instantly break apart, Jian Shen's previously impassive face grew colder as he sneered. Soon after the light wind sword swung into motion to meet with his enemies head-on. Following the bright silver glow of light, the men who brandished their saint weapons were instantly killed by Jian Shen's sword. Jian Shen had an absolute determination to kill anyone in the Tianxiong clan, so he didn't dare let any one of them escape. As the shouts and cries grew louder, more and more people from the Tianxiong clan were startled awake, and they all began to run toward the origin of the sound. Although the clan had fallen a bit the past year, it had originally been Wake City's #1 clan, so one couldn't underestimate the clan's strength. The amount of people in the courtyard alone was quite large. As more and more people rushed over, Jian Shen gradually became surrounded. Within the main halls of the Tianxiong clan, Tianxiong Lai was consulting with the few captains of the mercenary groups, but the moment he had heard the sounds of battle outside, his eyebrows furrowed together in confusion. Even the mercenary captains all looked at each other with doubt and puzzlement as they tried to think of what could be happening. "What's happening outside? Why is there so much noise?" Tianxiong Lai cried out in complaint to those around him. "Clan leader, there is a man who's causing trouble with our Tianxiong clan." Without warning, he has already killed 10 of our guards." A man hurriedly cried out as he came running into the halls. Tianxiong Lai's eyes grew furious as he thundered, "What? So someone dared to cause trouble for our Tianxiong clan?" "Yes, my lord. That man is extremely strong, and even the 2 Saint Master guards were killed by him." The man replied. "Humph." Tianxiong Lai's eyes radiated a hateful aura as he spat out, "He truly is too impatient for death to cause such a commotion within our Tianxiong clan. Let me see what kind of person he truly is." Chapter 223, Destruction of the Tianxiong Clan, 4. As the cries of battle and death rang out in the courtyard, practically over 100 people had already gathered there and blockaded the area so tight that even water wouldn't be able to get through. The white-robed Jianchen clenched his light-wind sword as he continued to weave through the group of people. With each movement he made, he killed yet another member of the Tianxiong clan. The silver light of his sword never ceased to stop flashing as each sword stroke he made slammed straight through the throat of each person and claimed their life. His movements were like water, and even after being surrounded by a group of 100 people, his face remained as calm as ever. "Halt!" Suddenly, a loud shout cried out, causing the group of guards to immediately fall back with their eyes still staring at Jianchen vigilantly. Tianxiong Lai flew toward the courtyard with a group of men right behind him. These men were the same ones who had just been talking with him in the main hall. Each one of them represented a different faction of the variety of power within Wake City. Tianxiong Lai entered the ring of people within the courtyard with a serious expression. When he noticed several dead members of the guards, his face took on a darker shade of color. In a brief moment, his eyes landed upon Jianchen and promptly froze. The moment he had seen Jianchen, his face began to tremble before emitting a large amount of killing intent from his eyes. He was looking at Jianchen as if he were a dangerous animal. "You're Jianchen." Tianxiong Lai spat out each word angrily despite the relatively calm expression on his face. Although in his eyes, the slightest tint of red could be seen. Jianchen smiled, "Leader of the Tianxiong clan, I didn't think you would still remember me." Tianxiong Lai's entire body was shaking now. Right in front of him was the murderer of his son Tianxiong Kong. How could he ever forget about him? Even in his dreams every night, he would constantly be reminded of Jianchen's existence despite seeing him a small number of times a year ago. Yet at the same time, Jianchen's face was forever burned into the very depths of Tianxiong Lai's mind so that he would never be able to forget it. "Jianchen, this old man was prepared to look for you, but I didn't think that you'd take the initiative to come knocking at my door. Since it's like this, you should be prepared to never set foot out of this place alive." Tianxiong Lai spat as his eyes looked at him with a great deal of animosity. With a smile of disdain, Jianchen said, "Tianxiong Lai, you couldn't prevent me from escaping a year ago. And here we are 1 year later with you saying that you will. With just your tiny Tianxiong clan, you don't have the qualifications to do that." Tianxiong Lai's eyes flashed dangerously at that. When the Saint Master level Jianchen had escaped from him after all he had caused, it had left an unwashable stain on his honor. However, what Tianxiong Lai didn't know was that at the time, Jianchen was merely a peak-level great saint with a good amount of distance from the Saint Master realm. "Brat, today I will see just how much you've changed since a year ago. Guards, block off his escape routes." A yellow glow began to flow down Tianxiong Lai's arm as he quickly grasped the newly formed battle axe and flew quickly toward Jianchen to fight. "Ha!" With a single roar, Tianxiong Lai raised his battle axe into the air and with a deafening shout, he swung it down toward Jianchen. A cold sneer appeared on Jianchen's face. 1 year ago, this thunderous strike of Tianxiong Lai would have forced Jianchen to dodge instead of block, but now the situation was different. A faint glow began to appear around Jianchen's sword as he lifted it up to block against Tianxiong Lai's weapon without any fear. Seeing how Jianchen wasn't trying to evade his strike, Tianxiong Lai's eyes flashed strangely. He thought Jianchen was stupid to not try to dodge. When he fought against him a year ago, he could clearly tell that Jianchen was overwhelmed by him. Today, he wouldn't ever have believed that Jianchen's strength had increased to such a devastating degree. With a screeching sound, the battle axe clashed against the light wind sword in an attempt to shatter it with his saint force. Ding! The two weapons clashed against each other with a loud bang as the Saint force within the weapons repulsed each other and scattered out in massive ripples of energy visible to the naked eye. Upon reaching the stone floors below, they instantly cracked and split as if made of tofu, with a series of cobweb-like cracks spreading everywhere. After the weapons had slammed against each other, Tianxiong Lai's eyes widened as he looked at Jian Chen in disbelief. Reflected deep within his eyes, fear began to surface. From that one exchange, Tianxiong Lai had a better understanding of Jian Chen's strength. The Jian Chen now had a strength that was completely different compared to a year ago. Back then, if Jian Chen wasn't so fast, he wouldn't have been able to constantly evade him and would have died like an ant underneath Tianxiong Lai's foot. But now, the previously weak ant had grown to become a mighty dragon that could fight against him on an equal level. That fact sent Tianxiong Lai reeling with disbelief. In fact, Tianxiong Lai felt that this Jian Chen in front of him and the Jian Chen from the past were two completely different people. The difference between the two was just too great. Jian Chen staggered back a few steps. Although he was able to defend himself against Tianxiong Lai's strike, he still wasn't completely matched in pure strength. Although Tianxiong Lai was a middle great saint master and had a strength that was greater than Jian Chen's by a certain amount, it was his mastery of the earth-attributed saint force that actually granted him an overwhelming superiority. Even peak great saint masters weren't much stronger than him in terms of fighting strength. Jian Chen was clearly the weaker one in this collision of attacks. In contrast, Tianxiong Lai still stood where he had been before. However, his legs had now sunk deeper into the ground by a single inch. "Brat, I didn't think that your strength would be so vastly different in the time span of a single year." Tianxiong Lai stared darkly at Jian Chen. "However, even with this major change, you will still not make it out alive." With that, he flew at Jian Chen once more. Chapter 224, Destruction of the Tianxiong Clan, 5. Jian Chen's sword arm flew toward Tianxiong Lai with an intense amount of sword chi flowing all around his light wind sword. Against the strong amount of sword chi, Tianxiong Lai didn't bother to evade. Instead, he used his earth attribute-infused battle axe to defend himself. As Jian Chen slashed downward with his sword chi-infused sword, Tianxiong Lai's body suddenly shook as his sword received the impact. After that, Jian Chen's body flickered away from view and then reappeared behind him. "You are seeking death." Seeing Jian Chen rush at him from behind, Tianxiong Lai's eyes flashed dangerously once more as his battle axe exploded with saint force and he swung it. This time, Jian Chen didn't bother to counter it and instead decided to dodge the battle axe. At the same time, his light wind sword became a streak of silver light as it flew toward Tianxiong Lai's throat. His sword was faster than Tianxiong Lai's axe by a large margin. By the time Tianxiong Lai could even react, the light wind sword was already closing in on his throat. Although his last exchange with Tianxiong Lai had determined him to be at a disadvantage, but strength wasn't his strongest point. In truth, Jian Chen relied on a speed so fast that his opponent would not be able to react in time. "What a fast sword!" Tianxiong Lai spoke out with some surprise. However, he was a veteran of hundreds of battles. Quickly a large amount of earth saint force overflowed and encased his body. By the time Jian Chen's light wind sword had struck Tianxiong Lai, his earth saint force had already fully formed around his body like a defensive armor. The sword shook from the impact slightly before stopping in place. In the next moment, the intense amount of sword chi from the light wind sword shot forward and pierced through the defenses of the earth saint force and continued on toward Tianxiong Lai's throat. Because of this moment of delay, Tianxiong Lai could safely retreat backward before hurriedly slamming his battle axe down onto the sword. With a turn of his wrist, the light wind sword instantly struck out another 3 times. Each sword stroke accurately stabbed against the same position on the axe. When the 3 strokes overlapped with each other, it caused the battle axe to be repelled backward because of the multiplied force. Tianxiong Lai held onto his battle axe with both hands in disbelief. When Jian Chen had stabbed at his battle axe 3 times, the amount of force behind it was strong enough for the vibrations to completely paralyze his arms for a moment. "Is this person in front of me really the same Jian Chen as the one from a year ago?" Tianxiong Lai asked himself. His strength had improved far too much in a single year for him to believe. The moment Tianxiong Lai had that thought, another streak of white light arced toward him once more. By the time Tianxiong Lai regained his bearings, the sword was once again near his throat and had already started to cut into it. The sword drew a look of pain on his face as some blood began to drip down his neck. At this stage between life and death, Tianxiong Lai had an alarmed face as he immediately turned his face away so that his neck would not be completely speared through. Whoosh! Just as Tianxiong Lai dodged the blow, a cold gust of wind blew past him accompanied with the slight stinging sensation on his neck. The light wind sword's blade barely nicked his neck with the sharp layer of sword chi that enveloped the sword. Despite the sword nicking Tianxiong Lai's neck, it only sliced through the topmost layer of his skin. If he had reacted just 1/2 second slower, he would have been struck through the neck and his life would have been claimed by the light wind sword. Tianxiong Lai flew backward with a cry as his earth saint force surged out of his body once more. As it enveloped his body, his hand reached out to touch his neck subconsciously. Looking down, he saw that his hand was already nearly completely wet with blood. A bone-chilling air descended upon Tianxiong Lai as his face paled. Jian Chen's strength had already far surpassed what he had initially estimated it to be. At this moment, Tianxiong Lai couldn't help but be skeptical. With his own strength, would he really be able to avenge the murder of his own son? "Everyone, please lend me your strength," Tianxiong Lai barked out without hesitation toward the group of people watching him. Upon hearing Tianxiong Lai's plea, the few people that he had initially invited hesitated for a moment before throwing themselves at Jian Chen to stop him. Whoever dares to start trouble with our Tianxiong clan is surely too impatient for death. At that moment, another voice called out from behind the Tianxiong clan's courtyard. As everyone turned around to look, the shadow of a person quickly flew over and landed right in the midst of Jian Chen and the incoming barrage of people. This man looked to be around 40 years old and wore a white robe made of expensive materials while looking very similar to Tianxiong Lai. His eyes landed upon the miserable-looking Tianxiong Lai before narrowing. Quickly stepping to reach his brother's side, he asked him, "Big brother, are you hurt?" This was the brother of Tianxiong Lai, Tianxiong Daoyun. Tianxiong Lai nodded his head slowly. "I'm fine," he whispered. Tianxiong Daoyun whipped his head up to look at Jian Chen with eyes that could ignite anything caught in his glance on fire. "Big brother, who is he?" Tianxiong Lai stared darkly at Jian Chen and spat out the words, "Daoyun, he is the murderer who killed my son." Tianxiong Daoyun's face hardened as he stared angrily at Jian Chen. "So you're the one that killed my nephew, Tianxiong Kong." Jian Chen looked at the two Tianxiong brothers before looking at the other people in front of him. There were a total of 7 other men. Aside from 2 elders, there were also 5 other middle-aged men who all exuded presences that Jian Chen could feel. From their presences he could tell that these men were all at the Great Saint Master level, but the 2 elders and another black-robed middle-aged man were at the peak Great Saint Master level. "Everybody, this is a personal matter between the Tianxiong clan and I. For those who are not involved, please leave, otherwise, come if you will." Jian Chen addressed the 7 men in front of him. The 7 people looked at each other for a brief moment before shaking their heads. Each one of them had personally seen Jian Chen's strength for themselves. This was not the simplistic situation that Tianxiong Lai had said it would be. In their eyes, Tianxiong Lai had nearly died to Jian Chen, and with this, they had started to fear Jian Chen a bit. Even though they were good friends with Tianxiong Lai, when he was on the verge of death, they could only stand by the side and watch. Chapter 225, The Death of Tianxiong Lai. Seeing the 7 people stay silent, Jian Chen smiled coldly. "So it's like that? Then don't blame me for being impolite." With that, his arms shook in place as the light wind sword was immediately engulfed in a large amount of sword chi. The 7 men's face hardened as they threw away their hesitation and brought out their saint weapons. Jian Chen's sword was extremely fast and flew out at such a high frequency that the 7 men were not only at a disadvantage, but they were also completely overwhelmed. The sword chi weaved in and out of the area as the light wind sword stabbed into the throats of several Tianxiong clansmen guards. Various saint weapons pulsed outward with their inner saint force, crashing and shattering apart the slabs of rock underneath and filling the air with the sounds clashing. In a short moment, Jian Chen and the 7 other men had already exchanged a series of blows. The 7 men's faces were all unnaturally serious, even though they had already known how fast Jian Chen's sword was. Now that they were personally up against it, the profoundness of his ability with his sword was all too terrifying for them to comprehend clearly. In this small moment, there were already 2 men who were injured. If it were not for the men by their side quickly pulling them out of the way or attempting to block Jian Chen, then he would have left devastating blows and the men wouldn't have a life to fight back with. Seeing Jian Chen fight furiously against the 7 men, Tianxiong Lai and Tianxiong Daoyun didn't waste a moment and instantly joined the group to fight against Jian Chen to make it a total of 9 great Saint Masters against 1. From farther away, the few remaining guards stood still as they watched the fight seriously. With 10 great Saint Masters fighting in the same battle, 9 of them versus 1 in fact, it was a sight that left them thunderstruck. Especially since the fight was happening in such a remote city like Wake City and each fighter slashing out at another with a large amount of Saint force, everyone couldn't help but be slack-jawed. Jian Chen's body disappeared in a blur of white as he instantly dodged to the side to avoid a blow before retaliating with his own sword that flew at the 9 instantly. Ding! The sounds of Saint weapons crashing against each other could be heard as Jian Chen held his light wind sword against the others. At this moment, a cold wind could be heard from behind before a biting cold wind pressed against Jian Chen's shoulder tightly as a yellow-colored Saint Force-infused battle axe swung down on it. Suddenly, just as the battle axe began to emit more Earth Saint Force down onto the battle axe, in a split second, Jian Chen's body flickered away and reappeared a step further away and dodged the giant axe just in the nick of time. At the same time, Jian Chen's body suddenly turned as his light wind sword began to emit an amazing amount of sword chi and flew at the battle axe like a viper. Tianxiong Lai had a serious look on his face as he observed the light wind sword. He had already experienced the lightning-quick draw of Jian Chen's sword once before and was thus prepared against it this time. Upon seeing the protective shield of the Earth Saint Force wrapping up around his own upper body, he tilted his head and moved to the side while bringing his battle axe around to swing at Jian Chen from a different angle. The first blow had looked to be extremely dangerous, but Tianxiong Lai had actually held back his strength. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to draw back his weapon and change its trajectory so easily. Jian Chen snorted as he looked at the next attack from Tianxiong Lai with disdain. His eyes betrayed the killing intent in them as he changed the path of his stab so that it would follow Tianxiong Lai's movements. Even more amazing was that the speed had even multiplied 3 times over. Seeing the change in momentum of the sword, Tianxiong Lai's face turned pale with shock. In a moment, he had realized that he wouldn't be able to shake off the sword. The incredibly sharp point of the light wind sword met against the Earth Saint Force armor around his body. It only momentarily stopped before the defense, well known for being the strongest defensive attribute, was instantly shattered. In an instant, the light wind sword regained its lost momentum and flew at his throat, shaving away his defenses like a hot knife through butter. Suddenly, just as Tianxiong Lai was on the verge of death, a bench-shaped sword dropped down heavily on the light wind sword, instantly forcing the path of it to deviate from its original target. A few strands of hair floated gently in the air as people saw that a part of Tianxiong Lai's long beard had been cut, but that was a small price to pay for his life. Tianxiong Lai's forehead was full of sweat now. If it were not for that sword, he wouldn't have been able to stand there alive and breathing. Not only was Jian Chen's sword extremely fast, but it was extremely agile to a degree that Tianxiong Lai had not expected. Then, the other 7 had finally caught a good chance to kill Jian Chen. Joining together at once to kill him, 8 saint weapons all flew toward Jian Chen all at the same time and all from different angles. The large amount of Saint Force acted almost as if it was a web of pressure that shackled Jian Chen within and sealed off any possible way of escape. With a snort, Jian Chen shook his arm that held the light wind sword and instantly struck out with it toward the direction Tianxiong Lai was at. In the perspective of the other 7 who were attacking him, it was as if he disappeared from their vision. Against Jian Chen's entire strength, the opposition of great Saint Masters could only defend themselves against 3 sword strokes with confidence. After his light wind sword had pressured them to retreat backward, Jian Chen made another movement and instantly propelled himself forward toward Tianxiong Lai like a bullet. Following the sound of air being displaced, Jian Chen's body catapulted forward as 6 saint weapons tried to attack him from behind, while another saint weapon tried to cut into Jian Chen's shoulder. After being saved from a critical moment, Tianxiong did not think he would be in danger again so soon. His face couldn't help but grow startled once more as he realized that the light wind sword was traveling toward his throat again. Immediately bringing up his battle axe to defend himself, the large battle axe tried to shield the upper half of his body from the sword. The next moment, Tianxiong suddenly felt the protective barrier created from his saint force breaking once more. Clenching his giant battle axe in this moment of crisis as his only reaction, Tianxiong could only feel a sharp stinging sensation in his throat. Jian Chen had gotten around him and pierced through Tianxiong's throat from behind. Seeing the sight of his own blood splashed on the sword through his neck, Tianxiong suddenly grew sluggish as though he was going into shock from what he was seeing. Chapter 226, Deterrence. Tianxiong had a look of utter shock on his face. Not even in his wildest of dreams could he imagine that the weak Aunt Jian Chen from 1 year ago would go through such a drastic change in strength. An even more inconceivable thing was to think about himself dying at the hands of Jian Chen. Originally, when he had first heard about how a youth named Jian Chen had eradicated the Zhou clan, Tianxiong's first thought was of the youth that had murdered his son Tianxiong Kong from 1 year ago. He had thought that Jian Chen had gotten help killing the Zhou clan. But even thinking about how Jian Chen could kill the Zhou clan who was weaker than the Tianxiong clan was still inconceivable to Tianxiong. Yet this still wasn't enough to worry him because the Tianxiong clan's strength was far higher. If he were to invite a few strong people to unite with him, then he would be a paragon of power within Wake City. Tianxiong invited a few good friends and even united with 2 other men of considerable power in different clans to deal with the help that Jian Chen would bring, or at the very least that he ensure wouldn't run away. After all, Jian Chen hadn't even been able to handle a few blows from him a year ago, so today was the day that Tianxiong had thought he would finally avenge his son's death. It was really unbelievable to see such a drastic transformation of Jian Chen when compared to the Jian Chen of the past who could only ambush people and run away due to his weak strength. In the time span of a single year, Jian Chen's new strength had turned the heavens on its head and transformed the weakling into a strong expert capable of killing an entire clan or 2. Tianxiong's head had instantly come up with these thoughts, but even at that moment, he had felt that whatever was happening right in front of his eyes was nothing more than a dream. He had been a great saint master, his brother was a great saint master, and even the other 7 he was with were all great saint masters, but they weren't even able to kill or even capture Jian Chen. How could this be anything but a nightmare? The life force within his body was already beginning to spill out as Tianxiong remained speechless. Slowly, his unwilling face began to fall toward the ground. Tianxiong Daoyun and the other 7 men all stared at the collapsed Tianxiong with looks of utter disbelief. Even the 100 clansmen and guards surrounding the fight all looked slowly at Jian Chen before looking back to Tianxiong without a single word. The leader of Wake City's number 1 clan, a great saint master with an earth attribute saint force, Tianxiong had fallen. Big brother, suddenly, a cry of anguish came out from Tianxiong Daoyun. With a face full of grief, he swung into action and charged at Jian Chen ready to slice him in 2. Seeing the explosive reaction from him, Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. The light wind sword became a flurry of sword illusions as it struck at Tianxiong Daoyun's sword. When the 2 made contact, another metallic ring could be heard as a large amount of energy pulsated and shook the air as it flew away from the 2 weapons. Then, with a flick of his wrist, Jian Chen shook off the vibrations running through his light wind sword and struck toward Tianxiong Daoyun's throat. Seeing the light wind sword come straight at him, Tianxiong Daoyun resisted the numb feeling in his arm and the shaking sword he was holding and immediately lifted the sword up. Jian Chen's sword was so fast that if Daoyun was given any more time to prepare, he might have been able to defend himself against 1 or 2 strokes. However, he only had enough time to bring up his sword, he wasn't able to do anything else but defend. As Tianxiong Daoyun brought up his sword, the light wind sword was already nearly in front of him. At this, the light wind sword began to emit a violet and azure glow. The 2 glows were rather faint, but with the way they glowed on the tip of the sword like a candle at night, it was rather eye-catching. Just as the tip of the light wind sword made contact with the broad side of Tianxiong Daoyun's sword, so too did the faint azure and violet glows. As soon as the glows touched the thick sword, they slowly began to melt the weapon and cracks formed. Instantly the light wind sword pierced through the cracks. In front of the azure and violet glows, Tianxiong Daoyuan's sword was like a piece of tofu. PCH. The sharp tip of the light wind sword had smashed through the rest of the sword, much to the extreme shock of Tianxiong Daoyuan, and penetrated through his throat. Seeing how Jian Chen's light wind sword had managed to find its way to Tianxiong Daoyuan's throat, the remaining 7 people immediately went still with their eyes and jaws wide open. Even more so, they stared rigidly at the broken remnants of Tianxiong Daoyuan's sword with thunderstruck expressions. The fact that Jian Chen had enough strength to fight against 9 great Saint Masters had already shocked them majorly, but now that they saw Jian Chen's spear through a great Saint Martyr's Saint weapon, they were inconsolable at this point. In the case that a Saint weapon was given Saint force, then it would grow even firmer and improve in strength along with its owner. If a Saint weapon were used to fight against another person of the same level, then no matter how long or how much the two would fight, neither Saint weapon would have even a scratch. If one wanted to scratch a Saint weapon, especially the Saint weapon of a great Saint Master, even an Earth Saint Master wouldn't be able to do it with ease. However, Jian Chen had done it with no difficulty, spearing it straight through to kill the great Saint Master holding it without breaking a sweat. With a feat like this, the 7 great Saint Masters couldn't help but suspect that Jian Chen was secretly an expert at the Heaven Saint Master level. Tianxiong Daoyuan's face was filled with shock as he looked at the sword in his throat. As his body began to shut down and resign itself to death, Tianxiong Daoyuan couldn't help but think to himself one last spiraling question: just how did Jian Chen stab through his saint weapon? Even though the question was on his mind, with a sword through his throat, Tianxiong Daoyuan couldn't ask it. In the end, he could only think about the question to himself as he slowly fell to the ground with his eyes staring vacantly up toward the sky, never to close again. Afterward, Jian Chen turned to look at the other 7 with a strong amount of pure, unhidden killing intent. The light wind sword began to glow silver as it pumped out even more sword chi, as if responding to Jian Chen's killing aura. The other 7 men could clearly sense Jian Chen's intent on killing them with pale faces. If Jian Chen was only just able to kill Tianxiong Lai, they would be shocked, but the method on how he did it had completely terrified them to a dizzying amount. Chapter 227, Submission. The other 7 men with pale faces could clearly sense Jian Chen's intent on killing them. If Jian Chen was only just able to kill Tianxiong Lai, they would be shocked, but the method on how he did it had completely terrified them to a dizzying amount. When Jian Chen had so easily stabbed through Tianxiong Daoyuan's saint weapon, it had demonstrated that if he wanted, Jian Chen could easily kill the 7 great Saint Masters with as much ease as stepping on an ant. Although a saint weapon was a man's weapon, it also symbolized their connection with their life. If their saint weapon broke, then they would die. Even if they were unfortunate enough to live, they would be no better than a cripple. Right in front of their eyes was solid proof that Jian Chen could easily destroy their saint weapons without trouble. Just thinking about how they were walking the narrow line between life or death had truly shocked them deep to their core. By now, the 7 of them had lost their fighting spirit and could only look at Jian Chen with a different expression than before, but still mixed onto their faces was a great deal of fear. "Stop. Fellow brother, please stay your hand." Seeing how Jian Chen was staring at them with a look full of malice, one of the elders hurriedly called out to him while reabsorbing his saint weapon into his body, as if showing his unwillingness to be Jian Chen's enemy. Then Jian Chen snorted, "Be lenient to you? What a funny thing to hear. Just a moment ago I had told you to not get involved, but you ended up involving yourself anyways, so don't blame me." Jian Chen's words had caused the 7 to look afraid for a moment before the elder who had spoken up before said once more, "Junior, this is nothing more than a misunderstanding. We aren't from the Tianxiong clan and were only invited by them. Today, if you let us go, we will not be able to thank you enough." "That's right, Junior, if you let us go today, we will truly thank you from the bottom of our hearts." The other elder spoke quickly. At this critical juncture that would decide their life, both elders had already thrown away their high noble status for a better chance of survival. Jian Chen's method of killing Tianxiong Daoyuan had already made their defenses absolutely useless. In their eyes, just protecting their lives today would be a higher priority than anything else. Plus, more importantly, they had no grievances or hatred with Jianchen. It was only because Tianxiong Lai had invited them that they were involved in this matter. Jianchen continued to stare at the 7 men with a flashing eye brightly. For a moment, he was silent, but then a small smile appeared on his face. So it's like that? Then I'll give you a chance to live. Upon hearing that, the 7 great Saint Masters' eyes sparkled. Despite 5 of the 7 not speaking up to protect themselves, they all had the same strong desire to live. Seeing the strong desire to live, Jian Chen's mouth began to grow wider as he spoke. There is one condition to your survival. From today on out, you will surrender and pay your allegiance to me. The 7 men's faces suddenly started for a moment with an unsightly look. Each one went silent as an intense struggle began to happen within themselves. Knowing how the 7 weren't able to decide, Jian Chen's face went cold for a moment, but inside, he was laughing. When he had used the azure and violet sword Qi to kill Tianxiong Daoyun, it was quite excessive, but he had already planned it all out. His goal was simple: by use of an overpowering amount of force, he would force the 7 into submission and eventually use that power to expand his flame mercenaries. Of course, if they continued to be pig-headed and refused to surrender, then Jian Chen would kill them without hesitation. Seeing the 7 men in front of him, Jian Chen knew that his plan was already halfway there. For now, he only had to see what the 7 would decide on. Jian Chen understood the "strike while the iron is hot" ideology, so immediately, he said, I know you are all influential figures of Wake City with a large amount of power and face. Do not think that I am trying to humiliate you by trying to have you submit to me. It's actually the opposite. If you submit to me, then I, Jian Chen, will guarantee that your achievements in the future will be far better than your current ones. Your achievements will even soar to a previously unattainable height instead of being limited to such a small and withdrawn city like Wake City. Do not doubt my abilities. All the men suddenly looked up as if they all felt a mutual feeling between them. Although they all thought Jian Chen to be too young, his strength was so strong that they felt as if they had been left behind in the dust. This display of strength had really proved that Jian Chen's identity was not simple at all. Of course, there were even a few people within their group that were convinced that Jian Chen belonged to an extremely powerful clan. With that, the 7 men couldn't help but think that being allied with Jian Chen would not be a bad thing. In fact, it would be a tremendously big opportunity for them to go along with Jian Chen, since they wouldn't know for themselves if they would truly reach a new height of power. Fine, I am Weiss, the representative of the Door clan. The Door clan agrees to follow you. From today on out, my men are yours to supervise. The first elder, who had spoken previously, pledged. Jian Chen couldn't help but have a happy smile on his face. I am Kai, heir of the Kai clan. From today on, my clan is yours to dispatch. The second elder spoke. Jian Chen's smile grew even wider. He hadn't thought that these 2 elders were the representatives of the Kai and Door clan. These 2 clans were very powerful clans that, while not on the same level as the Tianxiong clan or Zhou clan in Wake City, Jian Chen had heard about before. What about you 5? Jian Chen turned to the 5 middle-aged men. The great Saint Masters could be considered to be a decent-leveled warrior on the Tianyuan continent. So when it came to these type of people, he didn't wish for them to be killed, since aside from Mingdong and him, the flame mercenaries had no one else. If he wanted the flame mercenaries to expand, then he would need to gather as many strong people as possible. Fine, I am willing to follow you, but I cannot guarantee if my fellow brothers will do the same. After that, the remaining 5 men all consented to follow Jian Chen as their leader. From far away, the 100 guards of the Tianxiong clan looked at Jian Chen with wide eyes as if they were watching a drama. Every man had gone silent with shock as they watched 7 of Wake City's famous figures who had initially been invited by Tianxiong Lai to fight Jian Chen all follow him. They could never believe that these 7 would be subservient to the one man who had killed Tianxiong Lai. Despite it all happening right in front of him, the 100 guards still couldn't believe their eyes. Chapter 228, making a name for oneself in battle. Jian Chen's eyes swept across the 7 great Saint Masters in front of him with a great big smile. At this moment, his heart was filled with joy, since from this moment on, his flame mercenaries would no longer just be a solitary group. With the introduction of these 7 great Saint Masters, the strength of the flame mercenaries would increase many times over. However, Jian Chen understood that these 7 men were not truly obeying him and would most likely try to betray him later. Yet this wasn't extremely important to Jian Chen, since he was only planning to use them to temporarily improve his flame mercenary strength. He would use them to accomplish a few mercenary missions to improve their flame mercenaries' grade. This method was completely exploiting the 7 great Saint Masters, but since Jian Chen had no important use for them, he would only use them for a small amount of time. "Why don't you 5 introduce yourselves?" Jian Chen asked the 5. With some hesitation, the 5 men looked at each other before a black-robed man spoke out. "I am Seth, the leader of the hot-blooded mercenaries. I am Duo Kong, the captain of the Golden Dragon mercenaries. I am Charcus of the Char mercenaries. I am called Mo Tian, the leader of the mercenaries of slaughter. I am called Qingfeng of the Zephyr mercenaries." The 5 men called out their names and affiliation one after another, but with each introduction Jian Chen had heard, the more he was shocked. He didn't think that these 5 would be the captains of mercenary groups. If it was like this, then he had just gained control of 5 mercenary groups and 2 very influential clans of Wake City. With this revelation, Jian Chen was satisfied with the profit he had earned today. He didn't think that a lone person like him would suddenly make a leap to become someone who controlled a good amount of power. At the same time, he was painfully aware that while this was a strong amount of power within Wake City, within the Tianyuan continent, this was nothing major. Qingfeng of the Zephyr mercenaries. Upon hearing the final person's name, Jian Chen's eyes revealed a look of shock. This name was the exact same name as his sword. How coincidental. Jian Chen looked deeply at the man named Qingfeng closely. This man looked to be around 40 years old and was rather skinny, like how a scholar would be. He wore a white-colored robe and his hair was draped over his shoulders, reaching down to his waist. Occasionally, the wind would blow his hair in a way that made it drift in the breeze. His eyebrows were like sharp swords and did nothing to hide the bright pair of eyes underneath that contained a lively shine to them. They gave off the feeling that his stares could pierce into someone as easily as a sword would. Slowly moving away from Qingfeng, Jian Chen looked at the other group of Tianxiong members. Tianxiong Lai has died. From this moment on, Wake City will no longer have a Tianxiong clan. I know many of you are guards paid for by the Tianxiong clan. Since I am in a good mood and do not wish to mercilessly kill the innocent, you may all go. Suddenly the 100 guards all were shaken out of their stupor and turned their eyes away from the 7 great Saint Masters and the dead bodies of the Tianxiong brothers. The entire courtyard grew deathly silent. This one thanks the hero for his kindness. This one thanks the hero for not killing us. After that, the silence was instantly broken as many people began to cry out their thanks to Jian Chen. After that was done, no one had any reluctance to stay behind and immediately left. Quickly, the 100 guards left the Tianxiong clan courtyard, leaving behind 40 people that refused to leave. Jian Chen looked at those few people with some confusion. Why haven't you left yet? Some of the men hesitated for a second before a sturdy-looking man stepped forward and looked at Jian Chen's young face. Swordsman, I wish to go with you. Will you accept me? Follow me? Jian Chen had a surprised look on his face. Looking at this man, he guessed him to be around 30 years old with a good build of around 2 meters. His muscles were rather pronounced, and judging from the air he carried around, Jian Chen could estimate that this man was at the Saint Master level. Jian Chen nodded his head. If you truly wish to join me, then I'll add you to the registers in a moment at the Mercenary Union. The man revealed a look of pure joy as he hurriedly said, this one will listen to fellow swordsman's words. Fellow swordsman, I too wish to join your mercenary group. Fellow swordsman, please accept me into your mercenary group as well. Soon after that, a few other mercenaries began to cry out with their pleas for Jian Chen to notice and accept them. Although Jian Chen had killed Tianxiong Lai, many of these men were merely hired by the Tianxiong clan and had no other affiliation with Tianxiong Lai. They weren't friendly with him either, and so they did not have any hard feelings over his death, nor would they attempt at getting revenge on Jianchen. Because of their begging, Jianchen could only admit that while these men were at the great saint level and higher with only a few saint masters, once they joined the flame mercenaries, then the group's strength would increase many times over. Jianchen didn't know what their true aim was or if they had loyalties to someone else, but right now this wouldn't serve as a hindrance to the flame mercenaries. Right now, the mercenary group desperately needed members. When the situation with the flame mercenaries stabilized, only then would Jianchen clean the group of its tumors. Aside from Tianxiong Lai and Tianxiong Daoyun, are there any other men? Jianchen looked at the 40 remaining men and asked. As Jianchen asked his question, the first man that had pledged to follow Jianchen had immediately spoke up. Tianxiong Lai had 3 wives who all live in the back of the courtyard. Please wait one moment, fellow swordsman, and I will bring them out immediately. With that, he immediately ran to the back of the courtyard. Soon after, a few quick-minded people suddenly saw a good opportunity to get on the good side of Jianchen and immediately ran after the man. After seeing these men leave for the back of the courtyard, the remaining 40 men suddenly went dark as though they realized they just missed out on a good opportunity. Just looking at the men disappear into the back of the courtyard, the men had a dark killing intent in their eyes. Jianchen looked at those men and couldn't help but have a small cold smile on his face. From their expressions, Jianchen instantly took note of it and their faces, but he didn't do anything about it. To him, these men could be exploited later and could be expended at a moment's notice when their value dropped. Let go of me. Release me now. Soon the fearful cries of a few women could be heard as the group of men that had left earlier came back with 3 women in the middle of them. Out of the 3 of them, 2 were around 30 years old while the last one looked to be around 20 years old with a rather pretty appearance. Fellow swordsmen, these 3 are the wives of Tianxiong Lai. 2 of them have been with him for many years while the younger-looking one has only been married to Tianxiong Lai for 2 years. Before Jianchen could even ask, the first man introduced them. Jianchen nodded his head with satisfaction toward this man's work. He hadn't thought that this burly man would be so meticulous. The 3 women were deathly pale as if they had lost all blood circulation in their faces. The moment they saw the dead bodies of Tianxiong Lai and Tianxiong Daoyun, they all went silent with extreme shock. The man looked at Jianchen's face as he held his axe at the neck of one of the women. Fellow swordsman, since these 3 are Tianxiong Lai's wives, should we kill them? Don't kill me. Please don't kill me, the 3 women instantly cried out in terror from that question. As if they knew that Jianchen was the one responsible for this, they all looked pitifully at Jianchen's figure as their sparkling teardrops began to flow from their eyes like a river. Seeing how desperate these 3 women were, Jianchen could only sigh before waving his hand. Okay, let them go. Against these 3 women who couldn't even resist, Jianchen didn't care. After all, he wasn't a cold-blooded person. Yes, swordsman. They had no objections to Jianchen's words and immediately released the woman from their grasps and their weapons. Afterward, Jianchen took the large group of people and left the Tianxiong clan's courtyard. The matter regarding the Tianxiong clan could be said to have met a spectacular ending. The establishment of the Tianxiong clan hadn't been created that long ago and couldn't compete with the 100-year-old histories of many of the other clans. So the true pillars of the clan's strength were Tianxiong Lai and Tianxiong Daoyun. The news of the Tianxiong clan's extermination quickly made its way around Wake City and shocked it to its core. This piece of information had been even bigger than when the Zhou clan was exterminated. After everyone found out that the Tianxiong clan had been killed off, Jianchen's name had quickly soared to prominence so that practically no one in the city did not know him and everyone knew of his deeds. In the time span of 2 days, Jianchen had destroyed the Zhou mercenaries and Zhou clan before then destroying the Tianxiong clan. Not only that, but he had then subdued 2 clan elders and 5 captains of their own respective mercenary groups. With this shocking piece of information, absolutely no one could believe it at first. Chapter 229, Rise in Power. Jianchen led the 40 men to the mercenary union in the heart of Wake City with plans to add them all to his flame mercenaries. Fellow swordsmen, how should we call you in the future? A man asked Jian Chen. Call me Jian Chen for now. When you are all in my mercenary group, then you will call me captain. Jian Chen spoke evenly before turning back to the first man who had pledged himself to him. I still don't know your name. Upon hearing that, the man laughed heartily. I am called Xiong Tai, but captain can call me De Xiong instead. Ah, Jian Chen nodded his head lazily as he looked at the other 5 captains. Have you figured out how to deal with your mercenary groups yet? The 5 men all hesitated for a moment before Duo Kong answered, since we are planning to go with you, then this matter should be resolved by you. Jian Chen narrowed his eyes as he thought for a moment. After we get there, you will bring all your mercenaries there. Whichever mercenaries that are willing to follow me will join our flame mercenaries, whichever that aren't willing can go. However, those with a stronger amount of power than the others should be asked to stay behind for me to look at, understood? Understood. The 5 answered immediately. Then, Jian Chen paused for a moment before speaking to them once more. I know that you are unwilling to disband your mercenary groups, but do not worry. To follow me is to walk the right path in life. In the future, our flame mercenaries will definitely shock the entire Tianyuan continent. With that, Jian Chen's eyes emitted a bright glow of light as he vowed to make his plans come true. When his words landed upon the ears of the others, they had all thought it to be a joke. No one there treated it seriously. For an unknown mercenary group to want to become a super mercenary group that could shock the Tianyuan continent? These men were experienced with the long and arduous road of life. They knew that with the current strength of the flame mercenaries, the distance separating them and Jian Chen's goal was almost endless. Captain, what about our Dor and Kai clan? Although our clans aren't all that weak, but our strengths isn't well developed in the martial arts section. Both of our clans focuses on other affairs, and if we were to reallocate ourselves to being like a mercenary group, then that would damage us tremendously. Kai Er asked. Hearing that, even Jian Chen went silent. Kai Er's words had merit to them. The Kai and Dor clan were strong on some level, but they were both clans that were built on commercial business. After years of development, they had gained a huge role in Wake City's market. If that were dissolved, then their years of hard work and arduous labors would be lost without a chance of regaining it. Jian Chen pondered this for a good while before finally coming to a conclusion that the 2 clans should commit to their original growth. Both Weiss and Kai Er would be the overseers to the operations of their clan, but in the end, Jian Chen would be the ultimate puppeteer behind the scenes. As the large group of people walked through the streets in a wave-like manner, the passers-by couldn't help but look at them. 7 of the men there were prestigious members of Wake City and would seldom be seen out in public. Many people recognized who they were and began to talk among themselves about what was happening. Before they got onto the street with the mercenary union, Jian Chen and the 5 captains split ways. Then, with the remaining members from the Tianxiong clan guards and the 2 elders, Jian Chen entered the union. Within the mercenary union, there were a total of 43 guards and the 2 great Saint Master elders who then underwent a few procedures and became official members of the flame mercenaries. Within these 43 people, there were unexpectedly 16 Saint Masters. The remaining 27 were all at the great saint level. With these people and the 7 great Saint Master experts, it could be said without exaggeration that the previously unknown and small-scaled flame mercenaries had become one of the strongest powers in Wake City almost instantly. Although the amount of strength the flame mercenaries could utilize had exploded instantly, the rank of the mercenary group was still at the C rank. If they wanted to increase their ranking, they would have to accomplish many missions first. After all the procedures were done, Jian Chen led the entire group out of the mercenary union when suddenly Jian Chen heard a loud sound call out to him. Brother Jian Chen, I've finally found you. Jian Chen immediately stopped moving forward out of the mercenary union and then subconsciously turned to look in the direction of the call. As he turned his head, he saw the man who he had only just separated from 2 days ago. Hudolf, the captain of the loyal spirit mercenaries, came running up to him. Arriving at Jian Chen's side, Hudolf had a look of surprise at all of the people behind him but immediately turned back to look at Jian Chen. Brother Jian Chen, if I may be so bold to ask, but perhaps you could agree to my request? Smiling, Jian Chen replied to him, Captain Hudolf, speak whatever it is on your mind. When it came to Hudolf, Jian Shen had a rather favorable opinion of him, and so he was polite to the man. "Brother Jian Shen, I wish to join your mercenary group and travel with you from today on forward. Will you agree to my request?" Hudolf was rather embarrassed as he spoke. He was already 50 years old, yet he was asking to wander around the continent with a 20-year-old. Truly this was an awkward question for him to ask. Hearing the words of Hudolf, Jian Shen was utterly surprised. This request of his was something that Jian Shen had not expected. Despite feeling shocked in his heart, Jian Shen quickly calmed himself down. So even Captain Hudolf wishes to travel with me around the Tianyuan continent? Then this one would be honored to have you, but Captain Hudolf, how will you deal with the loyal spirit mercenaries? After you left yesterday, I've already made my peace with the loyal spirit mercenaries. My captain position has already been given to a capable brother to uphold, meaning that I am no longer a part of the loyal spirit mercenaries. Pointing behind him, he introduced 5 men that stood close by. These 5 men you've seen before. They are my brothers and left the loyal spirit mercenaries with me in hopes that we could travel with brother Jian Shen once more. Hudolf's eyes looked distant as he thought back to when Jian Shen had easily killed that war beast. With so much power at such a tender young age pointed out that Jian Shen was anything but ordinary. So after consideration, Hudolf had decided to abandon the dozen years of hard work he had put to become the leader of the loyal spirit mercenaries and instead became a follower of Jian Shen. Jian Shen looked at the 5 people behind Hudolf. These 5 weren't unfamiliar at all, they were the Saint Master experts from the loyal spirit mercenaries. Jian Shen wouldn't decline their request to join his flame mercenaries and immediately led the 6 in to deal with the official procedures to join the flame mercenaries as 6 new capable Saint Masters. At this moment, the heavily armored Commander Duo Li came into view with 2 guards at his side. Immediately walking up to Jian Shen, he cupped his hands together and smiled. "Brother Jian Shen, the Lord wishes for you to come up to his mansion for a small talk regarding some important matters." Chapter 230, Class 5 Magical Beast. The invitation of Wake City's Lord was something that Jian Shen couldn't reject. Plus, he still had something important that the Lord Yunli could help with. "Commander Duo Li, please wait for me to finish up my affairs here before we go." Jian Shen cupped his hands in return. Right now, he hadn't tidied up the positions and tasks for the members, and if he didn't take care of this, then many people would be dissatisfied, which was something Jian Shen wanted to avoid. "That's fine. Since I've said what I needed to say, I will be leaving first then." Commander Duo Li looked at Jian Shen for a moment before looking at the men behind him. Then, without any further words, he left the mercenary union. After Commander Duo Li left, Jian Shen too left the mercenary union with the group behind him. Since the mercenary union often had many people entering the building at once, it wasn't strange to see 20 or 30 men at the same time. So when Jian Shen left with his group of 40, it hadn't attracted any attention. "Kai Er." As they walked, Jian Shen suddenly called out his name. "Here, Captain. What is your command?" The 60-year-old Kai Er hurriedly responded. After seeing Jian Shen's strength, he didn't dare belittle him. After 10 years, when Kai Er was first a small-time mercenary to the man he was now, he had experienced many things, so he knew that if one had the patronage of a strong supporter, they would be stronger than a man without one. Plus, if this supporter was strong enough, then he would become stronger as well, so that no one would dare to offend him. While Jian Shen was around 20 years old, he had somehow managed to make it to such a high level of strength. Based on this fact alone, Kai Er had naturally assumed that Jian Shen had a strong patron supporting him. Even if he had no patron and was simply a genius of cultivation, Kai Er would be willing enough to follow him for that method. Even the other elders and masters of the Weiss clan had come to a similar conclusion. So these 2 elders had readily agreed to follow Jian Shen, because if he continued to walk this path of success, then sooner or later they would stand at the top of the continent as well. This moment was also precisely their chance to reach the top in the future. If they waited until Jian Shen's name stood at the top of the continent, it would be impossible for them to do so by then, even if they wanted to. "Why don't you take everyone to the Kai clan to reside there for a moment while I go to the Lord's mansion? We'll take care of the matters then," Jian Shen said. "Yes, Captain." Kai Er answered respectfully. Weiss, you return to your clan as well. In the future, you and Kai Er should focus on your merchanting business and work together so that you can control all of Wake City's business. And, don't worry, Captain. Our Kai and Dor clan may have been weaker than the Tianxiong clan even if we joined together. But now that the Zhou clan and Tianxiong clan are destroyed, their political power is all but gone. We can seize this chance and fight for the power they left behind and slowly gain control of all of Wake City. However, in this time period, we will need to have a good amount of martial power as well since many of the powers in Wake City aren't easily bullied. In the case they all join forces, then our Kai and Dor clans will not be enough to be their opponents. Weiss said. Jianshan nodded his head in approval before saying, let's not worry about this too much. Right now Wake City is on the verge of being invaded by magical beasts. When it's over let us talk about it then. After giving some instructions to the Flame Mercenaries members, Jianshan immediately left for the City Lord's mansion. After Jianshan had reached the City Lord's mansion, the guards at the gates blocked his path before asking politely, Are you Sire Jianshan? Correct, that is me. Jianshan eyed the guard calmly. Sire Jianshan, please wait one moment, I'll go notify the Lord. Immediately after confirming Jianshan's identity, the guard ran into the mansion. Seeing the man disappear into the mansion, Jianshan wasn't impatient at all. Instead, he began to wait by the doors. Not after long, the expensively dressed Yunli suddenly came walking out from within. Ah, brother Jianshan, why are you standing outside the gates? Ai, how inconsiderate of my guard, please, come in and sit down. Yunli had a cordial smile on his face as he approached Jianshan. Smiling in return, Jianshan followed Yunli into the guest room where they began to talk. Within the peaceful room, Yunli and Jianshan were about to sit down when Jianshan asked, What might the city lord want to talk about with me? Ai. Yunli suddenly sighed as the smile disappeared from his face and took on an extremely solemn expression. Brother Jianshan, after your appearance, our Wake City has lost quite a large amount of strength. Right now with the impending magical beast invasion, the pressure is quite more than before. Yunli had a bitter look on his face as if he was worried. Jianshan smiled after listening to Yunli, Lord, if you would answer this question, was there ever any appearances of any Class 5 magical beasts in the past waves? Yunli's face grew even more serious as he thought about Jianshan's question. Yes, the magical beast waves seem to occur every dozen to 20 years. And according to the past records, from the foundation of Wake City, there has been over 20 waves. Furthermore, there have been 5 recorded incidences with a Class 5 magical beast. With each of these occasions, our Wake City had major losses and paid a heavy price to kill them. With the final occurrence, we had managed to contact a king city where they dispatched an Earth Saint Master to come and deal with it. So that time, there wasn't much damage to our Wake City. Oh, when you say it like that, the odds of a Class 5 magical beast attacking isn't very high. Jianshan muttered with a confident smile. Lord Yunli, you needn't worry. I, Jianshan, will use my entire strength to protect Wake City from the magical beast wave. As long as there aren't any Class 5 magical beasts, there won't be any problems. Even though we have lost Tianxiong Lai and 3 other great Saint Master experts, this one will be able to fully make up for it without being inferior in any way. With these words from you, brother Jianshan, then I will definitely be at ease. I believe that Jianshan isn't one who speaks before he acts. Yunli's tightly knit eyebrows slowly loosened as he listened to Jianshan. Although he had never seen Jianshan's strength for himself, he was still painfully aware of how strong he was if he could single-handedly destroy the Zhou clan and Tianxiong clan. My lord, something major has happened. Suddenly the cries of a panicked person could be heard from outside the room. Shortly afterward, the closed doors to the room had been thrown open as a heavily bloody soldier suddenly came running in. My lord, something terrible has happened. The small squadron we sent into the magical beast forest on a scouting mission suddenly came across a Class 5 magical beast. Everyone aside from me was killed by the Class 5 magical beast. The soldier shouted with a labored breath as he tried to convey his words coherently. Chapter 231, The Sighting, What? A Class 5 magical beast? The sudden news instantly broke the silence in the meeting room. Immediately, Yunli's face paled as he stood up from his chair. With a single stride he reached the soldier and grabbed onto his clothes with both hands and a look of disbelief. What did you say? Did you really see a Class 5 magical beast? Yunli's words were practically shouts by this point. Yes, my lord, we came across a Class 5 magical beast in the Magical Beast Mountain Range. The soldier's voice began to tremble as his face drained with color. Even Jian Chen's face had hardened as he heard the words of a Class 5 magical beast being sighted. A Class 5 magical beast rivaled an Earth Saint Master in strength, but they had a natural superiority over humans and could easily fight against them. Unless a person had an extremely strong battle skill, they definitely wouldn't be considered an opponent for a Class 5 magical beast. Besides, Wake City wasn't a city where many Earth Saint Masters came to visit, making a Class 5 magical beast almost a paragon without a rival existence to them. A Class 5 magical beast was to an Earth Saint Master what a Class 4 magical beast was to a Great Saint Master. There was a clear divide between the two, almost as wide as the heavens and earth. In comparison, a Great Saint Master's strength compared to an Earth Saint Master was like watching a primary saint who had just condensed his saint weapon fight against a peak Great Saint. It would be a definite failure for the lower-ranking saint and would be impossible for them to win. Although Jian Chen had previously killed 2 Class 5 magical beasts in the Magical Beast Mountain Range, that was when both magical beasts were in a severely injured state where they couldn't even stand up. Their lives were hanging by a thread, but even then, he had paid a hefty price for killing the 2 of them. Jian Chen had no doubts that a Class 5 magical beast in an optimal state was far stronger than the Earth Saint Master who had chased him from Phoenix City. However, the appearance of a Class 5 magical beast only made him feel much greater pressure. That was because he had the Azure and Violet Sword spirits to assist him and increase his strength several times over. He was confident that his power was enough to punish a peak Class 5 magical beast with his sword, as long as he didn't encounter any bizarre existences like the silver-striped golden snake. Oh no, things are getting worse now that a Class 5 magical beast was seen. Yunli spoke with a hardened face. His eyebrows furrowed together in thought before finally muttering, "No, this won't do. Our Wake City is too weak to defend against the attack of a Class 5 magical beast. I must ask a King City immediately, otherwise Wake City will suffer tremendous damages." Up to now, there was no hesitation from Yunli as he immediately strode outside without even looking back at Jian Chen. A Class 5 magical beast was definitely a fatal enemy to Wake City's existence and could not be taken lightly. So, this matter had to be the first thing resolved and have some high-leveled experts come deal with the Class 5 magical beast straight away. Lord Yunli exited the room and went to his study where he grabbed a brush and paper to immediately start writing a message on it. After he was done, he immediately rolled it up into a cylinder and tied it with a piece of string. "Bring the fastest messenger bird, we have to bring this to Monarch City's lord immediately." "Yes, my lord." Immediately a soldier came in and quickly took the letter before leaving the room once more. "This is an order. From this moment on, the appearance of a Class 5 magical beast will be kept a secret from everyone. And in the meanwhile, do not travel out by yourself and bring the leader of the Wake City's Mercenary Union branch here. Finally, keep a close eye out on the activity of the Magical Beast Mountain Range." Yunli commanded to every guard he had before striding away. The news of a Class 5 magical beast appearing had stunned everyone who had initially heard the report, but Yunli had no intentions of announcing this to the public. He was afraid if that happened, then many people would be too intimidated by the beast and decide to leave Wake City in order to save their own necks. If this happened, then Wake City's defensive strength would plummet to the point where the city would eventually be flooded with magical beasts. Right now, Yunli had only one hope. He could only hope that a few experts would come help with this Class 5 magical beast. In this case, then the Class 5 magical beast would be able to be defended against and they could avoid disastrous losses. Jian Chen left the Lord's mansion by himself in thought. Although a Class 5 magical beast gave him plenty of pressure, it didn't affect him too much. In fact, he had secretly wanted awaited for one to come. Since his azure and violet sword Qi was able to shred through the defenses of a war beast that was reputed to have the same level of defensive power as an Earth Saint Master as if it was tofu, it could be seen clearly that the azure and violet sword Qi were insanely powerful. If it was that effective on a war beast, then what type of result would it have on a Class 5 magical beast? Following the route he had memorized back to the Kai clan, he quickly entered the courtyard Kai heir had allocated for the flame mercenaries to live in temporarily. The Kai clan was a 30-year-old clan, and so the information it had collected on others couldn't compare to the Zhou clan. Thus, the guards of the clan only numbered around 100. Under the supervision of the armored Kai heir, another group of guards would patrol around the flame mercenaries' courtyard. This was a standard 4-sided courtyard with 3 sides being a residential area and the last side being the front gate. In the middle there was a large patch of grass where a few dozen flame mercenaries sat in small groups and chatted among each other. The moment Jian Shen had arrived, everyone in the vicinity snapped their mouths shut and immediately stood up to greet him with shouts of "Captain." Staring impassively around himself, he spoke, "Seth, Duo Kong, Charkis, Mo Tian, and Qingfeng, have the 5 returned yet?" "Captain, those 5 haven't come back yet. I think they're dealing with their own mercenary groups," a 30-year-old mercenary responded. Suddenly, a voice called out behind him as a servant of the Kai clan suddenly came running towards Jian Shen. There was a fearful tint in his eyes as he approached before stopping right in front of Jian Shen. "My lord, the Golden Dragon mercenaries and Charkis mercenaries." Before the servant had even finished speaking, Kai heir waved his hand. "I know already, you may go." "Yes, my lord." Jian Shen smiled at the servant before turning to Kai heir. "Everyone stay here for now. Kai heir, accompany me to see just what surprise the 5 of them have brought me." Chapter 232, Unsatisfied? Then challenge me. Jian Shen and Kai heir walked to the front gates of the courtyard where the both of them could see the 5 captains standing with a large group behind them. Not a single guard by the gates had a happy expression while staring at them. The moment Jian Shen and Kai heir walked out to the gates, every single person standing behind Seth's mercenary group suddenly began to emit a faint aura of bloodlust. This was something only those truly baptized in the waters of death could prepare themselves for. In front of this amassed group of bloodlust, only those with a strong will would be able to approach. "Captain! Captain!" Upon seeing Jian Shen, Seth, Duo Kong, Charkis, Mo Tian and Qingfeng cried out to him. Straight after the 5 called out Jian Shen's name, the 100 men immediately focused their glares onto Jian Shen with cold stares like ice and their bloodlust matching those of a beast. However, after seeing how young Jian Shen was, a few of them couldn't help but look on in shock. Before they came, their captains hadn't disclosed the matter at all to them. So they knew quite clearly that they were to follow their captains to join an even stronger mercenary group with greater potential. Switching mercenary groups wasn't an unacceptable task to them, and so they tagged along with their captains to see this group. However, they didn't imagine that their new captain would be this young. 5 mercenary groups. The men behind us are our good brothers and the cream of the crop who are willing to join the flame mercenaries. Charkis pointed at the group behind him as he spoke to Jian Shen. There's a total of 121 men with us here. The hot-blooded mercenaries have 32 men, the Gold Dragon mercenaries have 25, the Charkis mercenaries has 17, the mercenaries of Slaughter have 28, and the Zephyr mercenaries have 19 men. Mo Tian spoke loudly. Jian Shen looked at the 100 and a few men with a small smile and nodded. Not bad at all. Let's talk more inside. Afterward, Seth and the other 4 led the group past the gates of the Kai clan, the wide eyes of the guards and into the courtyards. In the middle of the 4-sided courtyard, 170 men stood and stared evenly toward Jian Shen with expectant postures. Staring at the men in front of him with an observant eye, he spoke out loud, "Fellow brothers, I do not care what faction or mercenary group you used to be a part of. Right now, I want to make this clear. You are all now a part of the Flame Mercenaries, a family within a family. We must work hard for the benefit of our Flame Mercenaries, but I believe that with everyone working together, our strength will grow to where we will shock the entire Tianyuan continent and become the #1 mercenary group on the continent. This is Jian Chen's goal. After Jian Chen finished speaking, the crowd went silent for a moment before someone finally broke the silence. Then who is the captain of our flame mercenaries? A person within the crowd asked. Jian Chen smiled as he heard the question before answering. From today onward, I am the captain of the flame mercenaries. And why are you our captain? Another unsatisfied person exclaimed. That's right, just what reason do you have to be our captain? Kid, your hair hasn't even grown long and yet you want to be our captain. That's not an easy role to fill, that's right. His words are right. Slowly, the sounds of opposition grew louder and louder as many people began to voice their complaints. From the group Seth had brought, the vast majority of them were unhappy to hear that Jian Chen would be their captain. Although they all heard that their new captain was incredibly strong, with Jian Chen's age, how could they believe that? Jian Chen was only 20 years old at the most, just how strong could he possibly be? In regards to the noise of the opposition, Seth and the other 4 chose to go silent and watch. If Jian Chen wasn't even able to resolve such a small issue like this, then how would he lead the mercenaries onto the world stage? Jian Chen continued to smile despite the voices of resentment. He had expected this to happen. My strength, of course, is far stronger than yours. In this continent where power reigns supreme, strength is what decides everything. If you do not accept me as your leader, then come up and challenge me. Whoever can dodge my sword will be the captain that I will follow. Jian Chen's sword in its regular speed could make a great Saint Master flustered in 3 moves, and then bring them to a standstill in 5 moves. If he were to go all out, then even a great Saint Master would be killed. Right in front of him were only men at the Saint Master level. There would be no way for them to dodge or even defend against his sword. How arrogant of you! Then allow me to come and test just how much power a wimpy kid like you has. A burly dark-skinned man suddenly leapt from within the crowd and brandished his newly formed saint weapon in the shape of a large axe. Make your move then. Jian Chen exclaimed with a smile at the man. At the same time, the silver light wind sword appeared in his hand. Although the man in front of him was only a peak Saint Master and didn't require using his sword, he had decided that for the sake of displaying his superiority, he would need to use the light wind sword. Seeing the thin sword in Jian Chen's hand, the man didn't feel threatened at all. Taking a deep breath, he began to shout before charging at Jian Chen to chop him down. Against the incoming axe, Jian Chen didn't bother to dodge or defend at all. Suddenly, just in the moment before the axe could make contact with him, a silver flash of light came into view of the man's eye while the axe simultaneously pierced through Jian Chen's chest. Shwa! From far away, the group of people gasped in surprise. They didn't think that such an arrogant person like Jian Chen was nothing more than a thin stick in the wind and had lost his life that easily. However, the guards who had joined the flame mercenaries from the Tianxiong clan didn't have a change in their expression at all. They had clearly seen Jian Chen's strength for themselves. There was no way that such a simple attack like this would be able to make a claim on Jian Chen's life. How queer, that was actually a phantom image. Chapter 233, The #1 Power in Wake City. How queer, that was just a phantom image. Following that surprised shout, Jian Chen's figure began to slowly change before disappearing into the air. Following afterward, Jian Chen suddenly appeared out of nowhere 5 meters away. In that one brief moment, only the great Saint Masters had seen Jian Chen move to make a phantom image. Everyone else had been unable to register his movements. The man who had struck at Jian Chen was shocked, but since he had been through hundreds of battles, he forced his emotions back down and tried to slash at Jian Chen once more with even more saint force than before. The sharp blade of the axe made a loud swish sound as it flew through the air down onto Jian Chen. Jian Chen stood emotionlessly as he awaited for the man to reach him. The light wind sword had already long disappeared from his hands, but he looked at the man and spoke gently, "You've already lost." The man looked at Jian Chen blankly. At Jian Chen's words, he couldn't help but to stop for a moment as he asked with a perplexed look, "I've lost? How did I lose?" Smiling at the man's words, Tianxiong continued to look at him with a cheerful expression. Take a look at your neck. At this, the man touched his neck gingerly with his fingertips only to feel quite clearly a small sliver of a wound on his neck. He didn't know when that wound had appeared, but he did know that it wasn't there before. The wound had only just cut open the topmost layer of his skin so that he couldn't feel any blood leaking out or even any pain. Realizing that even though he didn't feel anything, there was still nonetheless a wound on his neck. Instantly, the man's face paled as a layer of sweat began to appear on his forehead. Did you do that? He asked, astonished. The man didn't know how he wasn't even able to feel the cut when it was made or when it happened. He did know, however, that if the wound was any deeper, then he wouldn't be standing alive on his feet. Laughing, Tianxiong nodded his head. Do you still wish to continue fighting me? Dahu, just give up, you're no match for the captain. If the captain wanted you to die, then you'd be dead where you stood. Duokong spoke out. In his eyes, there was a rarely seen huge amount of admiration. Although he did not use a sword, Duokong fully understood that Tianxiong's mastery of the sword had reached a level of perfection. Yes. The man was an ex-member of the Golden Dragon Mercenaries and Duokong was his previous captain. The words of Duokong would surely be the same as imperial law to him. Plus, the wound on his neck was already proof enough that if Tianxiong had wanted him dead, then he would be dead. Tianxiong looked around at the other men. Is there anyone else who wishes to challenge me? My words still stand. If anyone can beat me, then the captain's role will be given to them, as per my pledge. The entire courtyard descended into a deafening silence as the previously chattering group of men stopped talking. The man that had just challenged Tianxiong was a peak Saint Master, which could be considered one of the more decent leveled expert rankings within Wake City. If an expert of that level couldn't go against Tianxiong, who had only struck out once, then the vast majority of the group wouldn't be able to do any better. Therefore, the whole group began to approve of Tianxiong. With one final look around at everyone, Tianxiong revealed a victorious smile and said, since no one is speaking up, then starting today, you are all members of the Flame Mercenaries, and I will be the captain. Are there any complaints? Tianxiong exclaimed. I've no objections. I, Duokong, pledge myself to you. Duokong of the Golden Dragon Mercenaries declared. I too have no objections. I, Seth, will obey the captain's orders unconditionally. Seth of the Hot-Blooded Mercenaries followed up. After that, the rest of the mercenaries began to pledge themselves to the Flame Mercenaries. If their old captains had acknowledged him, then naturally they would follow suit and try to appease their new captain. Afterward, Tianxiong brought Seth, Duokong, Charcus, Mo Tian, Qingfeng and the rest of the mercenaries to the mercenary union. As long as they were to officially join his Flame Mercenaries, they would be able to accomplish missions for the sake of the mercenary group and increase their ranking. If Tianxiong was determined to make the Flame Mercenaries the number one mercenary group within the continent, then the mercenary rankings were unavoidable. This would have to be the first step to accomplishing Kendall's last wish. A group of 100 men along with 5 of Wake City's reputable members had quickly caused a disturbance in the streets. Each and every bystander looked on at the group with shock, and when they made out the figures of Duokong and the other great Saint Masters, they couldn't help but feel excited as they talked among themselves. Duokong and the other great Saint Masters were undoubtedly the experts of Wake City. Each one of them was a leader of a 100-man strong mercenary group which could be considered quite powerful within Wake City. Although they were not seen on the streets often, since the 5 of them had shown their faces at the same time, such a thing would naturally cause everyone to look at them. Tianxiong leading at the front was the focal point of the attention as everyone began to wonder who he was. The thing was, no one knew that Duokong and the others had already disbanded their mercenary groups. After a long time of handling the official procedures, by the time Tianxiong and the rest walked out of the mercenary union, their statuses had already changed. From the captains of several different mercenary groups, they were now mere C-ranked members. At the same time, the Flame Mercenaries were now 600 members strong. Aside from Tianxiong, there were 7 great Saint Masters and 6 Saint Masters. Although this number wasn't big, they could already be considered the strongest power in Wake City. At this point, only the city lord of Wake City with his troops of 200,000 soldiers would be able to contend against the flame mercenaries. Also, the news that Seth and the other 4 men joined an unknown mercenary group had spread like wildfire from the mercenary union. In a flash, this piece of information had caused the entirety of Wake City to be shocked. As for the never-before-heard of flame mercenaries, their name had quickly made its way around the entire city. Tianxiong hadn't cared at all when the whole of Wake City went into an uproar over this sudden development, since he had long since anticipated a reaction like this. After the procedures were done, Tianxiong and the group had immediately returned back to the Kai clan's courtyards. In the expansive courtyard, everyone was sitting down as Tianxiong began to explain a few things. Holding a space belt, he held it towards Kai Air and said, "There's a few monster cores inside, distribute a few to everyone and cancel any activities for now. Have everyone carefully increase their strength and make sure they are at their optimal state for the magical beast wave." Kai Air took the space belt from Tianxiong and proceeded to distribute the inside items to everyone. Tianxiong then took out 7 fist-sized Class 4 monster cores and proceeded to hand it over to the Great Saint Masters. For the next 2 days you will all also improve your own strength. However much you increase is however much you'll need. This next magical beast wave will have a Class 5 magical beast. The Great Saint Masters took the Class 4 monster cores, but the moment they heard the news of a Class 5 magical beast, Charkis couldn't help but gasp, "What? There's going to be a Class 5 magical beast?" Tianxiong nodded his head seriously. "That's right, there will be a Class 5 magical beast. It would seem that this magical beast wave won't be as easy to defend this time." Everyone looked at Tianxiong with a serious expression as they digested his words. Some had even gone deathly pale at the very mention of a Class 5 magical beast. "Captain, a Class 5 magical beast is indeed hard to defend against. I'm afraid that this time Wake City will have a disaster. I can't even say that Wake City will be able to be saved this time. I suggest that we immediately leave the city." A petite-looking man spoke with a tremble in his voice. The threat of a Class 5 magical beast had left a fearful effect on his heart. Hearing this, Tianxiong furrowed his eyebrows and spoke, "What are you afraid of? It's not as if the heavens are crashing down upon us. There isn't a need for everyone to worry about this Class 5 magical beast. I will find a way to deal with it." Tianxiong's confident words made everyone look at him in astonishment. Some even stared at him in disbelief. Tianxiong's words had made everyone think that Tianxiong was going to reveal his strength or that he had a way to deal with the magical beast. Even then, because of his age, some people were still very skeptical of his strength. So because of that, someone couldn't help but wonder, could it be that he began to cultivate from within the womb? The flame mercenaries still couldn't help but feel shocked for a moment before becoming extremely excited. An Earth Saint Master was undoubtedly one of the higher-level experts of the Tianyuan continent. For them to have an expert of the Earth Saint Master level within their mercenary group, caused every person to have the same thought: if they were to stay in this mercenary group, then they would definitely be able to achieve success without too much effort. Even the Great Saint Masters had a relieved look on their faces. It was no wonder that Tianxiong was able to fight against 9 Great Saint Masters without any trouble before finally killing 2 of them with ease. This would be no problem for an Earth Saint Master. Tianxiong didn't care for their reactions as he waved his hand. "Go ahead and split for now. Carefully improve your own strength so that your chances of surviving the magical beast wave invasion will be increased." Chapter 234, Battle Skill. An unexpected discovery afterwards, Tianxiong walked to a courtyard that the Kai clan had specifically made for him. Tianxiong sat at a table in this spacious and quiet courtyard and pulled out 3 space belts. One of these 4 space belts was from Zhou Butong of the Zhou clan. 2 others were from Tianxiong Lai and Tianxiong Daoyun. Back when he had left the Tianxiong clan, Tianxiong had gathered the 2 brothers' space belts. The day before, he had destroyed the Zhou clan and then immediately destroyed the even stronger Tianxiong clan, so Tianxiong had spent a night recovering the Saint Force he had lost. This meant that he hadn't had any time to examine the contents within the space belt. He now finally had some time to spare, and so he could look at Zhou Butong's space belt closely. Jianshan extended his arm to reach for the space belt and immediately looked at the items within. Inside the space belt, there was a small mountain of Class 1 and Class 2 monster cores, both numbering to around 200 in quantity. By the side, there was a small pile of Class 3 monster cores, though smaller than the mountain besides it, there were still 20 cores. Meanwhile, there were only 2 Class 4 monster cores. Apart from that, there were 4 small piles of coins. Copper, silver, gold, and purple coins were all gathered in 4 neat little piles, and in Jian Chen's estimation, there was a total of 10,000 purple coins worth of money. This must have been the daily allowance for the expenditures of the Zhou clan. Aside from this, the space belt had a few other things like clothes, but nothing too precious. After that, the space belts of Tianxiong Lai and Tianxiong Daoyun were examined. Tianxiong Lai's space belt had plenty of monster cores. There were 200 Class 1 and Class 2 monster cores, 40 Class 3 monster cores and 5 Class 4 monster cores. There were 2,000 purple coins and a purple card with an unknown amount of money associated with it. Tianxiong Daoyun's space belt on the other hand was more wretched. Aside from 100 purple coins, there were only 12 Class 3 monster cores and a single Class 4 monster core. After examining all 3 space belts, Jianshan couldn't help but have a wide smile on his face. There was well over 10,000 purple coins in the 3 space belts, 400 Class 1 and Class 2 monster cores, and 60 Class 3 monster cores. This wasn't a small amount of profit, but the most important thing was that there was a purple card with an unknown amount of money inside. After that, Jianshan took out the space ring he got from Zhou Butong from his space belt. This space ring was silver in color and had a simple decorative design that looked like something a woman might wear. Jianshan sized up this space ring in his hand for a moment before taking a peek inside. The space ring was a grade higher than a space belt in storage capacity. Its interdimensional storage was vastly incomparable to a space belt, and even the most expensive space belt could only hold a few cubic meters worth of space in storage. Although this space ring was not comparable in quality to the one given to him by his father, it was still 50 cubic meters large. Within the vast storage of the space ring, there was a wide variety of expensive-looking pottery. And in the middle, a single bookshelf with 3 sets of books towered over the other items. By its side, a slightly glowing purple card sat on the ground. Jianshan looked at the 3 books with a growing interest. He didn't have any hesitation and immediately looked through the books. A record of valuable treasures. 6 words on the cover of the first book caught Jianshan's eyes and they brightened from what he saw. Calming down his rapidly fluctuating emotions, Jianshan grabbed the first book to reveal the second. Human Tier Battle Skill, Wind Control. From those words, Jianshan's eyes dilated as his heart began to thump loudly. A battle skill. This is somehow a battle skill. Jianshan cried out in shock. He had never expected to find that Zhou Butong had been hiding a battle skill. On the Tianyuan continent, they were priceless treasures, and compared to the other cultivation treasures, even the lowest-ranked battle skills were still priceless. Jianshan's eyes went back to the cover on the book as he slowly exhaled. With some disappointment, he couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Still, what a shame that this is only a human tier battle skill." Battle skills were split into 4 levels. The highest was the Saint tier, then the Heaven tier, Earth tier, and finally the lowest human tier. Within each tier, they were then classified by another 3 layers. Slowly bringing his eyes away from the battle skill book, Jianshan gazed upon the first book to see the 4-word Spirit of the Wind. This was a human tier cultivation method best suited for those with the Wind Saint force. Shaking his head with disappointment, Jianshan looked away from the Wind Control and Spirit of the Wind books. These items were things that many people wouldn't even be able to dream about, but to him, these were something that were of little use. When he was in Kargath Academy, he had access to even Heaven tier cultivation methods, so a human tier cultivation method wasn't something that could spark his interest. Jianshan set the treasured objects back on the table and then slowly started to read. Time quickly went by as 2 days came and went. In those 2 days, Jianshan and the Flame Mercenaries were all sitting within the Kai clan courtyards cultivating in peace. The news of a Class 5 magical beast had brought about a large amount of pressure on them all, so everyone was trying their best to improve their strength in order to help protect themselves during the coming battle. Also in those 2 days, there were a series of strange-looking men caught around the courtyards. With the appearance of the Flame Mercenaries, it had piqued the attention of both big and small factions of Wake City. That was because 5 great Saint Masters in a single mercenary group could be considered to be a massive amount of power with just them alone. These 5 great Saint Masters were also well known in Wake City, which caused every faction in Wake City to pay attention to the Kai clan. Even though the Zhou and Tianxiong clan had been destroyed, with the impending magical beast wave looming overhead, it had affected the entire Wake City. Aside from the major powers, practically nobody else cared about it. During that night, in the guise of the pitch darkness, a gigantic flying magical beast suddenly landed on top of the city lord's mansion. From the back of the magical beast, 2 figures descended. Chapter 235, Senior Envoys. In the pitch dark night, a large flying magical beast suddenly descended upon the city lord's mansion. Thanks to the bright illuminations by the building, the shape of the flying magical beast could be roughly determined. It looked like an eagle with pitch black feathers and its wings spanning out to around 20 meters. On its back, 2 figures suddenly dropped down onto ground below with their clothes billowing in the wind. In the courtyard, Yunli stood by with a group of soldiers standing behind him nervously. Yet there was also an expectant look on each one of their faces. As the flying magical beast descended, Yunli continued to wait, but the moment it drew close, Yunli called out to the 2 figures, "This one is honored to greet the envoys." Dong 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 dong. In the early morning of the Kai clan's courtyards, the large knocking sounds of the door suddenly broke the early silence. Jianshen slowly opened his eyes as he looked toward the door. "Kai heir, come in." With that, the doors began to creak open as the expensively robed leader of the Kai clan came walking in. Welcoming the ever-so-calm Jianshen, he greeted, "Captain, Lord Yunli came by just recently and mentioned that he wanted to see you. He's currently waiting in the main halls." Muttering to himself, Jianshen said, "Just what does he want me now for?" "That I do not know, but judging by his expression, it must be something serious." Kai heir replied. "Well then, let us greet him." Jianshen threw the 2 Class 3 monster cores in his hand and followed Kai heir out of the room. Following Kai heir, they reached the halls of Kai clan only to see the armored Yunli standing with a middle-aged man next to him. Then, right by the middle-aged man, a young woman with an appearance revealing her to be around 20 years old stood by his side. In the last 2 days, Jianshen had made sure to pay attention to each important member of the Kai clan. This middle-aged man was Kai heir's son, Kai Lak. He was 40 years old this year, and the 20-year-old woman by his side was Kai heir's granddaughter, Kai Di. Jianshen recognized the person Kai Lak was talking to was Commander Duoli, who was smiling at him. "Captain! Captain!" Seeing Jianshen, Kai heir's daughter Kai Di immediately rose from her chair to call out to Jianshen. After the Flame Mercenaries had entered the Kai clan's courtyards, Kai heir had insisted that his son and granddaughter call Jianshen captain as well. Although both Kai Lak and Kai Di had first objected to it, after some words between them and Kai heir, they had finally relented to the matter. Jianshen nodded his head at the 2 as a way of greeting before turning to Commander Duoli. "Commander Duoli, what matter might you have for me so early in the morning?" Duoli turned to Jianshen with a small smile. "Brother Jianshen, Senior Envoys wish to see you. If you could, would you please come with to the Lord's mansion?" "Senior Envoys?" Jianshen's eyes narrowed as he tried to figure out who exactly this Senior Envoys was. Seeing Jianshen's confusion, Duoli explained to him, "Senior Envoys is an expert from Monarch City we hired to help defend Wake City during the wave." From the word expert, Commander Duoli bit his lips as he stared at Jianshen with a look of reverence. Hearing that, Jianshen's eyes flashed with hesitation as he spoke. "Commander Duoli, do you know for what reason this Senior Envoys wishes to see me?" "This I am not sure. Senior Envoys didn't explain and I didn't dare ask." Duoli shook his head. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed once more as he tried to think of many different reasons, but in the end, he could only follow Commander Duo Li back to the mansion. At the Lord's mansion, Commander Duo Li stopped right in front of the garden before turning around to talk to Jian Chen. Brother Jian Chen, Senior Envoys is awaiting for you within a pavilion further ahead. I still have some matters to attend to, so I cannot accompany you. Nodding his head in understanding, Jian Chen looked ahead to where the garden was. Surrounding the entire place was a multitude of different types of flowers with a sweet fragrance wafting through the air. With one breath of this fragrance, one would feel that their qi would stabilize since the amount of spiritual essence here was saturated. Jian Chen finally stopped to look at the pavilion in the center of the garden where two expensively robed figures sat underneath drinking wine. Yunli stood by their sides and respectfully poured some wine for them every so often with no guards in sight. Jian Chen stared at the two rich-clothed men for a moment. His mind had realized that these two were the ones that Duo Li had referred to as senior envoys, so without hesitation, he began to walk toward the pavilion slowly. On the way, his eyes continued to shift around from spot to spot in the garden. The moment Jian Chen had reached the pavilion, Lord Yunli hurriedly spoke out to the two envoys, senior envoys, "This brother here is called Jian Chen." The two envoys looked at Jian Chen at the same time as Jian Chen looked at them. He could see that these two were around 40 years old and one had a gentle disposition that would make anyone have a good feeling about them at first glance. The other's expression was the complete opposite of the other man and he had a cold expression on his face. Despite that, the two had the same type of clothing and accessories. Even more astonishing was that the two's faces were identical. "So you're Jian Chen." The gentle-looking figure smiled as he greeted Jian Chen. Jian Chen cupped his hands together in greeting. "Correct, I am Jian Chen. Might this one ask what fellow brothers here want?" Jian Chen's voice was neither disrespectful or respectful, and his posture was not improper in etiquette. After Jian Chen finished speaking, a large amount of qi filled the air and began to press down onto Jian Chen with a terrifying amount of pressure. Underneath, Jian Chen immediately felt that it was as if he were being weighed down by a heavy stone and found it suddenly hard to breathe. At this sudden development, Jian Chen's face was startled and his originally calm face gained a serious expression. There was a level of coldness as he stared at the gentle-looking man who was still beaming at him. Not to be outdone, Jian Chen began to fill the air with his own qi which immediately made contact with the one pressing against him. Pa! Following a loud bang, the previously quiet garden was suddenly engulfed in a fierce wind as the flower petals began to dance and fly into the air. "Senior envoys." Yun Li's face had changed as he cried out to them in a panic. The kind-looking envoy waved his hand at Yun Li as he continued to smile at Jian Chen without speaking another word. Chapter 236. The soaring sword qi. Jian Chen's qi had interweaved with the envoy's qi in midair in a way reminiscent of two dangerous beasts tearing away at each other without relenting. In contrast to where Jian Chen and the envoy were, the garden around them was assaulted by a strong gale which only grew in size with each passing moment. The kindly envoy nodded his head with yet another smile before increasing his output even more. In a moment's notice, the perilous situation Jian Chen was in had suddenly intensified. Jian Chen's face immediately hardened as he felt the qi increase in pressure. It was only just recently that Jian Chen was fighting at an even level with the man, but straight away, Jian Chen felt as if the entire area around him had frozen and he was trapped within. Unable to break free of the restrictions, even his clothes had been tightly pressed against him due to the envoy's qi. Jian Chen's throat released a small growl as he quickly increased his own qi. Quickly, it began to reach a peak, but the amount of qi the other man was still controlling Jian Chen and so he was unable to break free. Despite all of his best efforts, the amount of strength being imposed onto Jian Chen was similar to being tasked with climbing an unclimbable mountain. These two envoys were of the Earth Saint Master class while Jian Chen was only at the primary Great Saint Master level, therefore it was impossible for him to try and compete with either of the two. Although Jian Chen wasn't able to move even a fraction underneath the overwhelming qi, he was still unyielding to the man. His inner saint force continued to circulate as it tried to counteract the foreign qi surrounding him. Underneath Jian Chen's legs, the ground began to split away into several cracks. From the center of his feet, a series of spiderweb-like cracks began to develop in every direction. After the stone had broke, Jian Chen was slowly starting to sink into the ground. Seeing how the envoy from Monarch City was treating Jian Chen, Yunli couldn't help but have an anxious look on his face from the side. In his heart, he had already been convinced that Jian Chen was the young son of an influential clan somewhere with a potential that could only be seen once every 100 years. If a youngster like him was able to reach the great Saint Master level, then it was hard to tell exactly where his real limit was, or what heights he could reach. If this envoy were to offend Jian Chen, then he wasn't sure exactly what problem would later occur. Most importantly, if Jian Chen were to harbor a grudge after this, then a headache of a problem would definitely occur and trouble would happen. Despite the worry on Yunli's face, the two envoys in front of him were not people he could afford to offend. So, after a single attempt at placating the two, he didn't say anything more, and in fear of angering them, he stood by the sidelines once more. The envoy was trying to test Jian Chen's strength, and so they continued to increase the pressure onto Jian Chen. At this moment, both of Jian Chen's legs were breaking through the dirt, making him sink into the ground. Jian Chen's face was incomparably white, as if a heavy stone was still pressing down onto his body. Just breathing was a difficult task for him, but he continued to grit his teeth and persevere, and his eyes grew colder by the second as killing intent grew with it. Clearly, the actions of this envoy had invoked Jian Chen's killing intent. The envoy was still smiling at Jian Chen with a gentle look, almost as if he were a kindly old man looking after his domesticated livestock. However, by this point, the ever-increasing amount of qi pressing down on Jian Chen was so much he wasn't able to move even a fingernail. This must be the true extent of an Earth Saint Master's strength. With just his qi, I've been unable to move. How terrifying. I can't even compare to him as a great Saint Master. Jian Chen thought to himself in shock. The difference between an Earth Saint Master and a great Saint Master was like the difference between heaven to earth. There was just a huge line that separated between them. Just as Jian Chen was barely able to control his breathing, suddenly the azure and violet glows of light within his dantian suddenly emerged from his body in the form of two glows of light around his head. They looked to be the two handles of a sword that were currently stabbing into his head. At the same time, an unbelievably strong amount of sword qi flew outward, almost as if it were appearing out of nowhere. In a split second, the entire garden was filled with sword qi, and every unit of air was condensed with it. The feeling was quite sharp, unlike the gentle caress of a simple stream of wind. In fact, the feeling was similar to being sliced by multiple swords with a stinging sensation. The moment the sword qi flew out from Jian Chen's body, the flowers all around the garden began to dance wildly, as the next moment, a storm of dust covered the entire area. With a second look, not a single stalk of grass or flower was left remaining. Abruptly, the stone pavilion echoed with a rustling sound, as the entire storm of dust covered the sky in every direction. A short moment later, the outside of the pavilion couldn't even be seen anymore thanks to the dust which completely covered everyone's line of sight. What type of power is this? Hurry up and get back. The two envoys no longer had their calm expression on their faces and immediately flew backward to escape from the perimeter of the sword qi. Even Yun Li's reaction wasn't too slow, and he immediately leaped backward as well. His entire face was filled with anxiety before shock quickly overtook it. Just as the two envoys retreated, the two azure and violet-colored swords suddenly disappeared from sight back into his body in a single instance. Following their disappearance, the shroud of sword qi receded as well, leaving behind the remnants of the flower garden with scars everywhere. The two envoys and Yun Li stood 100 meters away in shock as they looked at Jian Chen with disbelief. However, in comparison to earlier, Jian Chen was in a sorrier state than before, as the ground beneath his feet were filled with cracks. From the three men's faces, a decent amount of tiny wounds with blood barely leaking out could be seen. Though, they weren't fast enough to retreat before some of their hair had been cut into pieces and floated away into the wind. Even their clothes had been ripped and began to stain with blood. Just what type of power is this? How could it be this terrifying? The gentle-looking envoy cried out with shock, and a healthy amount of fear reflected on his face. In that split second, both envoys had used their saint force to protect themselves. However, something absolutely shocking had happened then. This mysterious type of power had seemingly ignored their defenses and went on to injure both of them. Even more shocking, they had felt countless of tiny blade-like objects cut into them all over their bodies. Their thighs, waists, arms, hands, face, forehead, and chest had all been cut in some way and almost became a bloody mess. Chapter 237, Magical Beast Invasion. Seeing the miserable situation the two envoys were in 100 meters away, Tianxiong felt the final dregs of his anger flowing away from him. Although that envoy had placed an unbelievably strong amount of pressure on him, the consequences they had both suffered were much worse. Not only were their bodies damaged, but it had also been an attack on their superiority as an Earth Saint Master. This by itself would have been enough to insult their honor. Tianxiong continued to survey the sight around him only to see the miserable environment that had been reduced to dust thanks to the sword qi he had emitted. Internally, he couldn't help but to gasp in shock. With the azure and violet sword spirits being so strong, the little amount of sword qi they had released from his body could only make him tremble with shock. An endless amount of shock, to be accurate. For only a small amount of sword qi to bring about such a large impact on an Earth Saint Master, that was unbelievable. If the extremely weak azure and violet sword spirits had such an overwhelming amount of power now, then Tianxiong couldn't even begin to imagine just what kind of terrifying amount of power they might have at their strongest point. This is how strong he is? How terrifying. The raggedy Yunli went pale in the face as he muttered to himself. His forehead glistened with sweat like the other two envoys by his side. With his clothes no longer doing a proper job, every inch of his body could be seen with wounds and blood dripping all over. If it were not for the fact that he were bleeding, then no one would have believed that he had been injured. The people in Tianxiong's eyes had been completely terrified at his power. Looking at the three of them, he couldn't help but take pleasure in their pain. With a faint smile, he spoke out at last, "Lord Yunli, senior envoys, are you all fine now?" With each word spoken, Tianxiong took another step toward them. "Brother Tianxiong, don't come any closer." Seeing how Tianxiong was slowly advancing, Yunli couldn't help but feel startled as he cried out loud while simultaneously taking a few steps back as well. From the sudden event that had just transpired, Yunli was so terrified that his courage had completely been obliterated. That unbelievable amount of sword qi was far too terrifying, and if his reaction speed had been any slower, then he had no doubts that he too would have been reduced to nothing more than dust. The two envoys also took a few steps back as they looked at Tianxiong with some dread. At that moment, they had realized a few more things than Yunli. Both of them were painfully aware that despite the saint force they had been so proud of, against this threat, they might as well have had nothing to protect themselves with. Seeing how the two Earth Saint Masters had been reduced to such a state due to the azure and violet sword spirits, Tianxiong couldn't help but feel some self-satisfaction. "Lord Yunli and senior envoys, please forgive this one. My outburst was uncontrollable for a moment, but it is no longer a problem." Looking around the garden and its obliterated state, the two envoys couldn't help but have an extremely grim expression on their faces. That power just now, just what was it? Tianxiong shook his head with a sigh. "Envoys, please forgive this one. There's just some things that this one cannot speak of. However, that outburst of power just now wasn't under my control. If this one has committed any offenses, this one hopes the seniors forgive it. There is no problem at all. If we are in such a situation like this, then it is our fault completely. If I had not tried to test you with my qi, then that power of yours would never have manifested." The gentle-looking envoy immediately responded. After he had come to Wake City, he had heard about Tianxiong's achievements so far. The one called Tianxiong, he couldn't help but wonder just what type of person this one was. They had also wanted to test his strength just to see if he was as amazing as Lord Yunli said he was. However, they had never expected that in a single experiment, they had eaten such a heavy loss and their face had been lost as well. With this, the cold-looking envoy looked at the other one with a meaningful glare. This is your fault for looking for trouble. Hearing that, the first envoy couldn't help but laugh sheepishly. Jianchen, if we have offended you, we do hope that you do not take it to heart. Hurriedly, Jianchen replied back, how could that be? Your words should be coming from me. I truly do wish that seniors do not take offense. Senior envoys, brother Jianchen, because of this recent destruction, why don't we switch places to talk? Yunli spoke up suddenly. Despite having a body full of injuries, they were nothing more than superficial wounds and would be nothing more than a hindrance. Seeing how the two envoys and Jianchen had made up, Yunli couldn't help but sigh in relief secretly. Afterward, the three followed Yunli to an even more elegant lounge. On their way to the hall, however, many guards gave strange looks at the ragged condition Yunli and the two envoys were in, but no one said a thing. A little while later, the four finally arrived in the quiet halls where they began to talk to each other. Finally, Jianchen had found out the envoys' names as well as understanding their natures a little bit more. The two envoys were brothers from the same parents, but their characters had been the exact opposite. The kindly one was the older brother named Katata. Of the two, he was the well-natured one and only had a smile on his face, allowing people to feel at ease with him. The other person was the younger brother, Katafei. Compared to his older brother, he was rather cold and silent, causing people to feel as if he was extremely distant from them. After the talks, Katata had continuously tried to wrestle Jianchen's identity from him, but each time it was carelessly answered with a vague response. Even Katata had realized later that Jianchen wasn't willing to answer such a question, so he ceased to ask such questions in order to avoid being confused and to avoid incurring Jianchen's wrath. After the situation in the garden, Katata didn't dare to underestimate Jianchen. At this moment, Duoli had came back with a serious expression. After greeting the envoys, he immediately turned to Yunli. My lord, a report just came in. There's a large wave of magical beasts heading out from the forests toward Wake City. Suddenly, everyone there stopped talking as Yunli gave a heavy stare. How many are there? Many, just far too many for us to even count. Duoli replied gravely. Was there any traces of a Class 5 magical beast? Katata asked. Our reports say the scouts are too afraid of entering the magical beast mountain range. At the most, they'll enter the outskirts and so they weren't able to find any traces of it. Duoli held his hands in an apologetic manner. Duoli, prepare the entire city immediately. Withdraw the scouts and shut the city gates to prevent anyone from leaving. Yunli thundered as he jumped from his seat to run out of the room. Chapter 238, The eve before the invasion. With Yunli immediately announcing the start of the magical beast wave, the entirety of Wake City had spread the news like wildfire. Suddenly, the entire city exploded into action, as every single mercenary group that heard the news immediately trekked toward the city gates with their brethren to prepare. With the news of combat to be close at hand, the atmosphere was unnaturally serious, but at the same time, everyone was rather excited. The moment Jianchen left the Lord's mansion, he returned back to the Kai clan where the 7 great Saint Masters and 100 other members of the Flame Mercenaries ran up to greet him. On the road, not a single caravan could be seen anymore, only a large amount of heavily armored mercenary groups heading toward the same destination. Among them, many of the mercenaries walked with an excited look to their faces. This time, the mercenary union in Wake City had issued a report that if they were able to provide the left ear of a magical beast, then they would be able to claim the money reward for killing a magical beast of its rank. The more ears they collected, the more rewards they could collect. While the magical beast wave was extremely dangerous, where one could lose their life if not careful, the allure of a monetary reward was tempting to those not afraid of death. However, this sum of money was all paid for by the city lord personally. Though it was not a small amount of money, with Wake City being so close to the magical beast mountain range and monster cores being a good source of money, it could be said that both Wake City and the Lord were rich. Otherwise, they would have never been able to afford the type of walls a first-class city would have. When Jianchen led the 100 men to the city gates 1,000 meters away, they suddenly found it harder to move as a large throng of men crowded the area and made it impossible to move. At this, Tianxiong merely stepped back and spoke out to the 7 great Saint Masters behind him, "Clear the way for us." The 7 great Saint Masters were all famous people within Wake City, with many people knowing who they were. So, many people immediately cleared a path for them, since many of the men felt intimidated by their presence. Exchanging places with Tianxiong, the 7 men's presence spiked in intensity as Duo Kong shouted out, "Fellow brothers, please make way." Under their control, the amount of power exuding from them had caused the road in front of them to suddenly clear out as if a sharp sword had cut through it and forced the group of people to move off to the side. Isn't that the captain of the Golden Dragon mercenaries? I didn't think he'd be here. That's the captain of the hot-blooded mercenaries as well. I've heard rumors that they dissolved their mercenary groups to join another group called the Flame Mercenaries. Though, I'm not sure if it's true or not. The moment the 7 great Saint Masters showed their faces, they had immediately garnered the attention of everyone who began to talk about them. Hidden behind the large group, Tianxiong followed the 7 great Saint Masters without gaining anyone's attention. Just as the group was 500 meters away from the walls, suddenly a large commotion could be heard up ahead. Then, a heavily armored soldier came walking towards Tianxiong. It was the commander, Duo Li. Brother Tianxiong, the Lord and senior envoys are waiting for you at the walls. Allow me to accompany you. The moment Commander Duo Li saw Tianxiong, his voice grew even more polite than before. Walking ahead of the group, Tianxiong returned the smile. "Then if you would please do me the honor in leading." Afterward, among the astonished stares of everyone else, Tianxiong and Duo Li left together toward the city gates. The walls of Wake City were that of the same standards of the walls in a first-class city. They were 40 meters tall and 20 meters thick. On top of the walls, there were all sorts of soldiers of various strengths. Not only that, but many strong mercenaries were also on top of the wall. There were also 30 magical crystal cannons mounted over the walls, with 5 mercenaries manning each one with a trunk full of monster cores. Commander Duo Li brought Tianxiong to Lord Yunli, who was staring out beyond the city walls with a serious expression. By his side, there were a few well-known figures of Wake City and the 2 envoys. Both of them were wearing black-colored robes and did not look like they were ready to talk. Even if someone were to try to talk to them, it looked as if the envoys wouldn't even bother to pretend to notice them. "Lord Yunli, what is the situation looking like now?" Tianxiong spoke softly to the Lord. Yunli continued to stare out beyond the city without a change in his expression. "It's not looking reassuring. This time's magical beast wave has way more magical beasts than before. Brother Tianxiong, take a look. Their numbers are almost immeasurable." Tianxiong grew solemn after hearing that as he looked to where Yunli was pointing, only to see a black storm of magical beasts slowly make their way toward the city. He couldn't even make out a single magical beast's body, let alone count them. With this spectacle, Tianxiong's eyes could only narrow in concentration. For the mentally stupid magical beasts to walk forward in such a manner like this, there must be a Class 5 magical beast commanding them. After all, they possessed an intellect that, while beneath that of a human, it was enough for them to control other magical beasts. This magical beast wave is quite peculiar. Lord Yunli, I remember the last magical beast wave had magical beasts that just recklessly threw themselves at the walls. How is it this time they are walking in such a disciplined manner? A white-haired elder spoke out in confusion. That's right, the last time Wake City was invaded, it was completely different from this one. Another middle-aged man spoke as he looked at the incoming wave with worry. After the 2 had spoken, the men standing by Yun Li's side began to debate among themselves. They weren't men of lesser intelligence, each one of them could realize that something was amiss in this wave. Seeing that everyone had felt something was strange about this wave, Yunli knew that it was no use in trying to hide the secret anymore. Without pondering any longer, he spoke out loud, "Everyone, the truth is, this magical beast wave has a Class 5 magical beast hidden within it. For our Wake City, this magical beast wave could be said to be a test of survival of an extremely grim nature." Chapter 239. The beginning prominence of one's reputation. After hearing Yun Li's confession, everyone's face immediately grew deathly serious. Yet, no one was making a loud fuss since each one of them could roughly guess that this was the reason why the magical beast wave was so different this time around. With a magical beast wave happening in Wake City every 20 or so years, there were plenty of people who would come to participate. So for those who had been in Wake City for many years, they had understood the nature of how a magical beast waves worked. This new wave was especially weird. If the normally dumb magical beasts were suddenly walking in the same manner as a disciplined army, this could only be the work of a Class 5 magical beast. How troublesome this is. A Class 5 magical beast is extremely strong, and even an Earth Saint Master would have trouble being victorious if they fight alone. With our Wake City having no experts of our own to help defend against a Class 5 magical beast, it looks like we can only hope to try and employ a strategy of overwhelming them with our numbers. An expensively robed elder spoke gravely as the news of a Class 5 magical beast had registered completely with him. Against a Class 5 magical beast, we would have to use an entire crowd of great Saint Masters in order to have a hope of overwhelming it. Those who are of the Saint Master level wouldn't have a chance of penetrating its defenses, therefore no hope of doing any type of damage to it at all. Spoke another middle-aged man cloaked in a red robe. He was sturdy in stature and radiated a strong killing intent as he looked at the magical beasts. That's right, a Class 5 magical beast is something that only those at the Great Saint Master level could hope to damage. Even then, if there is a Class 5 magical beast that specializes in defense, then Great Saint Masters couldn't even hope to damage it, even if it stood still for us to hit it. I truly hope that this Class 5 magical beast won't be too hard to deal with, otherwise, Wake City will be extremely hard to defend. A short-haired man spoke out to the others. Words are easy to say, but if a Class 5 magical beast truly does show up, all of our Great Saint Masters shouldn't be focused on it alone. Aside from the Class 5 magical beast, there are still a multitude of other magical beasts, certainly including many Class 4 magical beasts. If we were to have all of our Great Saint Masters fighting the Class 5 magical beast, then how would we deal with the others? What are you afraid of? Our Wake City has at least 100,000 mercenaries and easily double that in city soldiers. Although we cannot go one-to-one with those beasts, our men will be victorious. I don't believe that our combined mass of people will not be able to defend against these magical beasts, nor will they be able to stand against the magical crystal cannons we have on the walls. Hearing the men begin to quarrel, Yunli cleared his throat. Do not panic, everyone. While a Class 5 magical beast brought us a great deal of pressure, but that has been dealt with. Our enemies right now are those of the Class 4 magical beast and lower. Despite this, there are still a mass amount of magical beasts to deal with, so everyone cannot let down their guards. If we cannot match them with our numbers, then we will fight them with our experience. Lord Yunli had shocked everyone with his words. My lord, what are you saying? The Class 5 magical beast has been dealt with? Could it be there are some Earth Saint Masters in Wake City right now? Yunli nodded his head gravely with a faint smile on his face. That's right, so everyone shouldn't pay attention to the Class 5 magical beast and focus your attention on the other lower-leveled ones. My lord, then do you know where these seniors are? We would like to pay our respects to them. Someone immediately called out. Yunli shook his head with an apologetic expression. My apologies, but the envoys had made it clear that their identities would not be exposed. If they become displeased, then it would be quite disastrous for our Wake City. Hearing that, everyone could only secretly sigh in sadness. Earth Saint Masters were incredibly rare in Wake City, and even in the continent, they were considered experts of the higher order. To these people, they truly wished to pay their respects to them in order to make friends with them and hopefully gain their assistance in any matter. After Yunli had spoken, they had given up on their idea of getting close to them. However, the word envoys had alerted them of a few things worth remembering. Jian Shen, who was standing nearby, wasn't overly noticeable. Instead, he spent his time looking over 100 meters away at the two black-robed envoys. He couldn't help but think to when the two were forced into a miserable position, and smiled as a result. Who knew that the two Earth Saint Master envoys hired by Wake City from Monarch City would have ended up in such a sad condition by him? When Jian Chen's eyes hovered over the two envoys, Kadata suddenly felt that he was being stared at. Turning to look at him, he had a kind smile on his face as usual. "Brother Jianchen, come here and let's have a talk, shall we?" Although being 100 meters apart and a noisy crowd divided the two, his voice could still be heard loud and clear as if amplified by some unknown means, so that it felt as if the two were talking right next to each other. Katata's voice had suddenly attracted the attention of everyone else in Yunli's company, who immediately turned to look at the two black-robed envoys. However, their own strengths weren't enough to perceive anything out of the ordinary from the envoy's strength, so when they tried to inspect the two for a moment, they finally lost interest and turned away once more. At the request of an Earth Saint Master like Katata, Jianchen didn't dare to refuse. Bidding goodbye to Yunli, he immediately headed for the envoy's position. "Jianchen." Seeing Jianchen walk by, the white-haired elder's eyebrows furrowed together as he sounded out Jianchen's name before his eyes suddenly took on an astonished glint as he stared at him. Seeing how the elder was standing perplexed now, the cyan-robed elder to his side whispered to him, "Elder Hiyu, what's wrong?" The white-haired elder continued to stare at Jianchen's retreating back, whispering so that Jianchen couldn't hear. He said, "I've heard the name Jianchen before. Isn't that the same name as the person who destroyed the Zhou and Tianxiong clans?" The cyan-robed elder started when he heard that. Immediately, his eyes flew over to Jianchen's back and sucked in a deep breath of air sharply. "Elder Hiyu, I had completely forgotten about the matter until you mentioned it." According to the guards who had fled from the Tianxiong clan, the one who eradicated the Tianxiong clan and single-handedly beat 9 great Saint Masters was a 20-year-old youth who is apparently quite handsome to look at. "The youth who just walked by us seems to be a good fit. Take another look. This has to be the very same Jianchen who destroyed both clans." Chapter 240, 6 Cycles of an Earth Saint Master. The two elders continued to talk gently, but with everyone standing close by having a strong sense of hearing, they had naturally heard the words being spoken. "What? The youth that was just standing here was that Jianchen? He's so young though. How could he be so strong then? Just how many youths have you seen wield so much power?" A man spoke in awe. Right, he truly is so young and yet so unique." After the 2 days where 2 major clans had been annihilated, everyone was painfully aware of the name Jianchen. However, with the incoming invasion of the magical beasts, everyone had placed the wave in the front of their minds and had forgotten about the clans. This was a point of life or death for them, and so the deaths of the Zhou and Tianxiong clan were not worth a higher priority and quickly receded into obscurity. Jianchen's name was no longer mentioned either and did not come to mind as quickly. "This can't be said for sure." A tall man sneered with some contempt. "Those were nothing more than rumors, and none of us had seen the matter for ourselves personally. But to me, I'm sure these rumors are only partial truths and were greatly exaggerated. Just look how young he is. He can't be a year past 20. How can someone so young cultivate to such a powerful level? Maybe he began cultivating when he was in his mother's womb. We can't say for certain that the destruction of the Zhou and Tianxiong clan was done by one person or with the help of a few others." The others began to nod their heads. What this man had said had a great deal of logic behind it. Rumors were rumors after all. Each one of them had weathered many storms and listened to many rumors, but only a small part of them were true, while the vast majority were half-truths or not even truths at all. Hearing the group trying to guess at the real truth, Yunli couldn't help but reveal a knowing smile on his face, yet at the same time, his body couldn't help but shake and tremble for a moment. He could only lament over the fact that he too was not aware of Jianchen's strength, but he did know that the event regarding him and the envoy in the garden not too long ago had forced both the envoys and him to take a major loss. This wasn't something that Yunli was willing to share with the group. Jianchen arrived at where the envoys stood with a smile. Whether or not Wake City can be successfully defended depends on senior envoys. Katata could only laugh as he looked at Jianchen with an amicable smile. It was this smile that made everyone want to be good friends with him. "Jianchen, since I'm older than you, might I call you Junior Jianchen, or is that too much?" Katata asked casually. "There's no problem at all, of course." Jianchen replied with a smile. Even though Katata was smiling at him with such a kind look, he was still on guard. In his experience, if Katata's expression was a genuine feeling from the heart, then he was definitely a person worthy of being a friend with. However, if it was nothing more than something fake, then the man's strength should be feared and guarded against. Katata looked at Jianchen closely. Junior Jianchen, although my brother and I are both Earth Saint Masters, the strength of a Class 5 magical beast is still something that can go against our expectations. Even if the two of us were to join hands to kill the magical beast, it would still be a difficult task, so therefore, I sincerely hope that Junior can lend us a hand if the time arises. With a self-deprecating smile, Jianchen replied, Senior Envoy, you must be joking. I've only the strength of a great Saint Master, how would I fight against a Class 5 magical beast? Doing so would be the same as throwing my life away. Even though he had said that, Jianchen's heart couldn't help but thirst to fight against a Class 5 magical beast, but at the same time he knew that his strength wasn't sufficient enough to fight against one unless he used the strength of the Azure and Violet Sword Chi. Junior, you truly are modest. In the garden you had displayed such an explosive amount of power that frightened even my brother and me. Even now, my body still aches from the pain I felt then. If Junior is to use that same power, then I am sure that the Class 5 magical beast will fall to your hands. Katata said. Jianchen had a bitter smile on his face. Senior Envoys, that very power isn't something I can control. Nonetheless, this one will strive hard to defend Wake City against the magical beast wave. As long as you mean those words, then my heart will truly be at ease. Katata spoke with some relief. Taking note of the change in his tone, Jianchen quickly continued, Senior Envoys, with you two here, this magical beast wave will be no problem, correct? Hearing that, Katata could only sigh. True, before, I didn't even bother to think the Class 5 magical beast to be my enemy. But now that I am standing here, I don't dare belittle it. Jianchen's expression changed as well. Could it be that the Class 5 magical beast will be hard to deal with even if both seniors join together? He asked with surprise. Correct. Katata's smile suddenly disappeared without a trace as it grew unnaturally serious. When my brother and I were standing here, we both detected a presence so strong that it could suppress even the both of us. Katata's evenly spoken words had been like a clap of thunder in Jianchen's ears. He couldn't help but be utterly surprised as he muttered, how is that possible? A Class 5 magical beast with a presence so strong that it could suppress both seniors? Just how strong is that magical beast? Katata smiled bitterly. Junior Jianchen, it seems to me that you don't know how Earth Saint Masters are classified. Allow me to explain it to you. He paused for a moment to draw breath before continuing. Saints, Great Saints, Saint Master, and Great Saint Masters all are split into 3 additional layers. Those 3 layers are the primary, middle, and peak layers. After the Earth Saint Master realm, there is suddenly 6 different layers of strength. We call these the 6 cycles. The first cycle is weakest and the 6th cycle is the highest. In the case that one breaks through to the 6th cycle of the Earth Saint Master realm, the following stage is the Heaven Saint Master realm. My brother Katafii and I are only at the 2nd cycle in ranking. As for the hidden Class 5 magical beast, I suspect it is at the 4th cycle in terms of strength at the very least. It's even possible that it is at the 5th cycle, where it is many times stronger than my brother and I combined. Jianchen's face grew deathly serious as he listened to Katata. When Katata had said that Earth Saint Masters were divided into different levels of strength, he couldn't help but wonder how strong the Class 5 magical beast that was found in the forest was. Chapter 241, Start of the Invasion. Katata continued to speak, and Earth Saint Master are separated evenly between the cycles. A first cycle Earth Saint Master is as far away from a 6th cycle as a Saint Master is from a peak Great Saint Master. There is no chance of victory for the Saint Master, and even if my brother and I were to join hands, we both are only at the 2nd cycle level. If we were to join hands, then we would be able to fight against a 3rd cycle Earth Saint Master, but against a 4th cycle Earth Saint Master, then there is no chance. After all this, but our opponent is also a magical beast. Hearing Katata's explanations, Jianchen couldn't help but be extremely serious. With this, he had finally understood just how wide the differences were between each cycle of an Earth Saint Master. A first cycle Earth Saint Master was to a Saint Master as was a sixth cycle Earth Saint Master was to a peak Great Saint Master. At this moment, Tianxiong couldn't help but be anxious as he thought about Wake City's chances of surviving the wave now. Although Wake City wasn't his home and had no feelings of it, Tianxiong had no desire to see the entire population of a city succumb to a magical beast invasion. Wake City's gates had long since closed and the traveling merchants still on the road had been notified of the magical beast wave long ago. So they had all taken a lengthy detour around Wake City's vicinity before taking shelter in a nearby city and waited for the wave to be over before continuing on with their travels. Far away, the dense crowd of magical beasts continued to stamp in a slow trail toward Wake City. Aside from the heavy stomps of their feet, not a single roar could be heard, and from the looks of it, it seemed as if these magical beasts were just soldiers practicing a drill. Ho! Suddenly, the gigantic roar of a magical beast came reverberating from the depths of the magical beast mountain range. Its roar was so loud that even the stones on top of the gate started trembling from the sound. This sudden roar had jolted the tens of thousands of magical beasts whose eyes suddenly grew fearful. Immediately, the magical beasts suddenly stopped where they stood in unison 5 kilometers away from the city walls. Looking at the crowd of magical beasts stop right in front of the city walls almost, Cat-Ada let out a breath of air. This hidden Class 5 magical beast is very intelligent. It has fought against humanity multiple times and knows how our magical crystal cannons work. At this distance, the magical beasts are just outside the range of our magical crystal cannons. Cat-Ada immediately looked to his still silent brother Katafii. Katafii, our opponent is far stronger than what we thought. By now, it is too late for Monarch City to send any more reinforcements, so it is up to us to defend the city behind us. Katafii nodded his head without a single break in his expression. His eyes still pointed far ahead as if he were trying to find the Class 5 magical beast. Ever since the garden, he had only spoke a single phrase. Throw down the armored wall. Suddenly at Yunli's command, a large sheet of steel plating suddenly dropped down from the city walls and fully covered the entire city. From far away, it looked as if Wake City had been fully encased by a steel plating. This steel plating was a meter thick and were connected to one another by a steel chain. With each steel plating being so thick, it would be able to repel a Class 3 magical beast with no problem. Seeing how the steel platings were descending down from the walls, Tianxiong couldn't help but sigh in admiration. With a steel plating like the one right in front of him, then the defenses would be extraordinarily strong and could withstand a large amount of force for some time. This truly was another example of how Wake City's defenses could be said to be on par with a first-class city. Commence the firing of the middle-tier magic crystal cannons. Yunli barked out an order. Straight after his command, Cat-Ada had an astonished look on his face. I didn't think Wake City would have a middle-tier magical crystal cannon. They truly do deserve to be so near the magical beast mountain range. How rich, a middle-tier magical crystal cannon can fire up to a range of 10 kilometers. That's double the range of a primary-tier magical crystal cannon and can definitely hit those magical beasts. The soldiers began to scamper here and there to follow Yunli's command. The magical crystal cannons were constructed so that they would take in the energy from the monster cores and would then fire out a special type of energy. On the Tianyuan continent, there were 3 types of magical crystal cannons: primary tier, middle tier, and advanced tier. A primary tier cannon used Class 1 and 2 monster cores as an energy source, but the energy output was not always the same. Middle-tier cannons used Class 3 and 4 monster cores, but an advanced-tier cannon required a Class 5 monster core at the least to supply the fuel. A primary-tier cannon had a range of 3 kilometers while a middle-tier cannon had a range of 8 kilometers. On the other hand, an advanced-tier cannon could shoot up to a terrifying range of 20 kilometers. This was the best offensive and defensive besiegement weapon. Magical crystal cannons were welcome to every country and city on the Tianyuan continent, with primary-tier cannons being practically universal. Each and every major city had a few ready for use while always hoping to come across an advanced-tier cannon. Each fortified stronghold by the empire borders had a few advanced-tier cannons, but with it requiring Class 5 monster cores, they could fire it once. Thus, they preferred to use it in a disastrous situation or as their last resort, but no attackers would dare try to survive one of those shots head-on. Another reason was that with each shot of the advanced tier cannons, it was the equivalent of shooting away money. After the middle tier cannon was charged up, an extremely tremendous amount of explosive energy began to stir within the cannon, making people feel as if it was about to explode. For those with a small amount of courage, they wouldn't dare to get any closer. In truth, there had been many cases where the cannon wasn't able to handle the extreme amount of energy stirring inside. When that would happen, the energy exploded from within, causing massive damage to everyone around. However, this was a risk that every country was willing to face for the sake of a better chance of winning. A few breaths later, the middle-tier cannon was finally done charging, and with another order from Yunli, the 4 cannons mounted on top of the walls fired immediately. Bang! With an ear-deafening blast, a gigantic blast of energy shot out from the middle-tier cannon at an incredible speed toward the crowd of magical beasts 5 kilometers away. Boom! Following a loud resonating blast, a large cloud of dust filled the air as the explosive energy destroyed anything within a 30-meter radius. Bits and pieces of magical beasts could be seen flying through the air in every direction. The might of a middle-tier cannon was extraordinary and could destroy a Class 3 magical beast with ease. Even a Class 4 magical beast wouldn't be able to take a blast like that easily. If hit directly, they would be instantly fried, and a Class 5 magical beast would at the very least be injured to some degree. The 4 middle-tier magical crystal cannons laid claim to at least 30 Class 3 magical beasts, a good start. As if this was the start of the battle, the magical beasts instantly grew restless and slammed their fists and legs where they stood while snarling angrily. Reload the middle-tier magical crystal cannons and fire straight for the higher-leveled magical beasts. Yunli thundered at the soldiers near the cannons. Yes, at the same time, another heaven-shaking roar came from the magical beast mountain range. This roar was louder than before and spanned for seemingly 20 kilometers, so that even Jian Chen's ears began to ring afterward. Following this roar, it was as if the magical beasts had received an order. With an explosive roar, they all began to charge recklessly toward the city walls. Thousands of magical beasts charged at the walls with reckless abandonment, causing those on the top of the walls to pale for a moment. Even those at the top of the wall could feel a slight tremor growing stronger and stronger. Prepare the crossbows. Yunli barked out another command. Immediately, a series of holes spanning a foot wide opened up within the walls, and upon further assessment, there were about 100 of them. Then one by one, strong-looking men began to prepare the crossbows as intense-looking bolts protruded from the holes. The tips of the bolts looked like they were made with steel, even the shaft resembled that of a superior metal. Each one of these bolts were 2 meters long, and because of that, they required an extremely strong and big crossbow to fire. These weapons were able to pierce through the body of a Class 3 magical beast. Even the ones at the peak level would be tremendously harmed. When the thousands of magical beasts were 3 kilometers away, Yunli gave out an order: fire the primary tier magical crystal cannons, let them feel the pain. Bang! 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 With a slightly less loud explosion, the 10 primary tier cannons fired straight at the magical beasts with an extensively large amount of firepower. The bursts of energy landed firmly against the incoming crowd, completely obliterating large groups. After a short period of time, the primary tier cannons were ready to fire once more, and with another bang, a large amount of energy exploded forth toward the crowd of magical beasts. The blast sent a good few of them flying away, while the remnants of a few magical beasts could be seen spinning through the air. The magical crystal cannons fired a few more rounds before the magical beasts were only 500 meters away. Fire the crossbows! Yunli cried out. Chapter 242, Desperate Close Combat, Fire the Crossbows. With Yunli's command, the men stationed within the walls began to fire the crossbows at a lightning-quick speed. The bolts flew through the air with a whistling sound that left the onlookers quite terrified. PCH. 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 With the tremendous penetration force of the bolts, many of the Class 1 magical beasts were instantly speared through. Even as the bolts flew straight through the beasts, they did not slow down in the least. The bolts continued to fly through another 3 or 4 Class 1 magical beasts before finally losing their initial momentum, embedding themselves in one final beast. This volley of firepower had shot over 200 crossbolts, which ended up taking the lives of over 500 Class 1 magical beasts. After that, the second volley of fire immediately mowed down the frontmost magical beasts and filled the air with howls of pain and gunfire. From overhead, the cannons continued to fire down upon the mass of magical beasts that took even more lives. That didn't deter the lesser intelligent magical beasts at all. The scent of all the blood in the air had roused their bloodthirsty nature as they continued to roar out loud while increasing their pace toward the walls despite the continuous volley of fire directed at them. Boom! The magical beasts were now so close to the wall that some of them were now firmly striking at the armored plating on the walls. Following each blow, the steel plating began to tremble and vibrate while some parts of the metal defenses had begun to dent a little. A few of the more fragile magical beasts had begun to make use of their claws in hopes of damaging the steel plating, while some had resorted to biting the walls. Some had even managed to take advantage of the various cracks on the plating to climb up it. Seeing the larger magical beasts approach, Yunli's eyes flashed dangerously as he shouted, "Douse them in hot oil." A vat of scalding hot oil was suddenly poured down from the walls and splashed down onto the magical beasts below. Immediately, the fur of those who got splashed by the oil caught fire before turning the magical beast into a moving bonfire. Underneath, countless of magical beasts howled miserably in pain as their entire bodies were submerged in the burning oil. As their fur caught fire, the fire and the oil began to cause a tremendous amount of damage to their bodies. There was an abundant source of hot oil thanks to the various stoves working to create some more. As the streams of hot oil fell down the walls, the entire ground below had become a sea of fire and misery as the beasts roared in pain. Afterward, a putrid smell wafted up and invaded everyone's noses. Wake City had no moat around, so the magical beasts had no chance to find a source of water to douse themselves in to remove the flames and oil. There were many magical beasts in close proximity, and with their fur being extremely flammable, the fire had quickly spread out to encompass everyone. Underneath the walls, the magical beasts were in chaos. Even though they lacked intelligence, even the dumbest of magical beasts could tell that they were on fire and would die if they stayed there. Consequently, the magical beasts all scattered to get away from the splash radius of the oil. However, the oil continued to rain down from the walls. Despite the steady stream, their supply was not endless and eventually ran out. In the half-hour of warfare, the oil supply had all but ran out, but the damage had been done. The oil had damaged plenty of magical beasts and burned a good amount of them to death. Now that there was no more threat of the oil, the still-alive magical beasts quickly stamped out the remaining fire and continued to charge at the wall once more. The more nimbler magical beasts began to climb up the walls once more alongside a large number of vipers. Those who ran up the walls were immediately cut down by multiple saint weapons, sending their bisected bodies flying back down to the earth. At the same time, a soldier quickly ran to where Yunli, "A report for the Lord, the crossbows are all finished firing, not a single bolt is left unshot." Looking at the scene below, Yunli nodded slightly before crying out, "Open the gates and attack." Wake City's most terrifying weapon against the magical beast waves were the magical crystal cannons, oil, and crossbows. The cannons were for long-ranged fighting and were used to target and kill the strongest magical beasts. As the magical beasts approached, then they would switch to the oil and crossbows. After a good amount of time passed, both the oil and crossbow ammunition had been all used up. At this moment, the only thing left to do was attack. Slowly, the gates creaked open as the magical beasts changed directions to charge in between the opening gates. However, the moment they stepped inside, the various mercenaries inside blocked them. "Fellow brothers, charge. Work hard to collect those ears. Charge. The sparkling allure of a purple coin will soon lay within our pouches." Every single mercenary was boiling with excitement as their will to make battle soared into the air. One by one they charged through the open gates with their saint weapons leading the vanguard. With each swing a magical beast would fall to the ground, be split in two and rain down blood everywhere. Ho! A few magical beasts cried out in pain as they felt the chilling metal of the saint weapons bite into their bodies. In a flash, many more magical beasts were quickly cut to pieces and a few of the more nimble men quickly grabbed at their ears before happily storing them into their space belts. Hurry up and charge everyone. A huge pile of purple coins await us. Don't waste any time and hurry up, charge. A shout emerged from each mercenary as they charged toward the savage magical beasts almost as if they were pieces of coins. Because of the allure of money, these men were not afraid of death. Underneath the power of every mercenary, every single magical beast was swiftly harvested and stored away for future use. Over 200,000 mercenaries stormed out from Wake City to fight with the magical beasts in intense close combat. Every second a magical beast or mercenary fell to the ground, never get back up. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.